Chapter 101 Dragon Continent 2. The next day, Ash quietly left the inn he had been staying in. His destination was the central area of the village, or rather, the island. That was the meeting point for their departure. Today, they would be sneaking into the Dragon Continent with the help of a space mage. According to Rek, they had set up a teleportation array that connects to an underground area on the other side of the island. Once they arrived, Ash would part ways from the rest of the group, while the others would begin their assigned tasks. Mining for rare ores and gathering valuable herbs, Ash had no intention of joining them. That wasn't the reason he had come here. Soon enough, he reached the gathering spot. A crowd had already formed, consisting of around 50 to 60 individuals, all quietly waiting for what was to come. Amid the group, he quickly spotted the familiar faces he had traveled with. "You're early?" Lena said with a small smile, her tone a mix of observation and surprise, as if she had expected him to arrive just on time, not ahead of schedule. Ash didn't respond with words. He merely gave her a quiet nod, keeping his thoughts to himself. The others in the group also acknowledged him with silent nods. The light-hearted chatter from previous days was gone, replaced with a heavy silence. Everyone had grown serious now. They were about to enter the Dragon Continent, after all. Dragons were not just creatures of fantasy or tales told to children. They were beings of immense respect and power. Many believed that if dragons didn't possess such prideful and lazy personalities, they might have already claimed dominion over the entire world. From times long forgotten, dragons had been revered with awe and fear. They were called many things: the greatest magicians, the mana-blessed, the old ones, and more. Of course, dragons weren't the only mythical beings said to inhabit the world of Ecumia. There were others, legendary beasts like the White Tiger, the Serpent Kings of the Seas, the Thunder Wolves of the Storm Peaks, and even the rare phoenixes. But their numbers were few, so few that many doubted their existence altogether. They were rarely seen, rarely spoken of in truth, and phoenixes were widely believed to have gone extinct entirely. Yet dragons were different. They had endured. Their legacy stretched through history like a river carved into stone. Even now, they stood tall and proud, just as solid and unshakable as the great towers of the Empire. "It looks like everyone is here," the space mage finally spoke, his calm voice cutting through the silence that had settled over the group. He had been quietly watching, waiting for every last person to arrive. After glancing around and confirming the head count, he gave a subtle nod. "Let's get started then," he announced, lifting the staff he carried and tapping it gently against the ground. As soon as the staff made contact, the magical array etched into the earth below them began to glow, its symbols lighting up in a wave of energy that slowly expanded to cover everyone standing within its reach. "Hold tight. You might feel a little dizzy when the teleportation activates," he warned with a slight grin, speaking from experience. That voice, full of casual confidence, belonged to Torin, who stood near Ash. And just as the sound of his words faded into the air, Ash felt that familiar tug once more. That strange, twisting pressure that wrapped around his body and soul as space itself bent and shifted. But it didn't catch him off guard this time. It wasn't his first time experiencing teleportation, and he braced himself without panic. As the world around him unraveled and then stitched itself back together, Ash opened his eyes, and what greeted him was a world unlike any other. The Dragon Continent had finally revealed itself. The first thing he felt was the air and the mana. It was thick, almost tangible, far denser and clearer than anything he had experienced before. The mana in this place was alive, pulsing with energy, as if the very air was soaked in pure magic. Compared to this, the mana he had grown used to back home felt dull and almost lifeless, like a faded shadow of the real thing. What a heaven, Ash thought, quietly marveling at the sensation. Just by staying in a place like this, your body would slowly grow stronger. The mana would naturally seep into your skin, bones, and blood. With enough time, even someone without talent might extend their lifespan by a decade, maybe more. It was a kind of blessing that only a few lands in the world could offer. The next thing he noticed was the place they had arrived in. It was a massive cave, wide and deep, and judging by the faint echoes of pickaxes striking stone and the way the walls glimmered, it was probably a mine, or mine to be exact. Ash could already see several people working, their silhouettes moving among the rocks. The ores embedded in the earth shone brightly, glowing like scattered stars across the dark stone, casting a soft light throughout the cavern. It was beautiful, not the kind of beauty you find in polished cities or colorful meadows, but a raw, silent beauty that felt natural. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Jaren asked from beside him, breaking the silence with a voice that carried a rare calmness, as if even he couldn't help but admire the view. Ash gave a small nod in reply. "I heard from the ones who went up to collect herbs on the surface. They say it's even more beautiful up there," Jaren continued, his eyes drifting upwards toward the distant exit. "And if I remember correctly, your destination is on the surface too, right?" "Yes," Ash replied quietly. Jaren let out a breath, then looked at him with a seriousness that felt heavier than his usual tone. "I won't try to stop you. You've got your reasons and I respect that. But just be careful. If you accidentally wake up one of the dragons, it won't just be you in danger. All of us might get dragged into it. That's just how things work around here. Remember, your actions, they always affect the people around you, whether you mean for them to or not. So, don't die, all right?" Then he added in a softer, almost whispering voice, "If fate wants it, we'll meet again." With that, Jaren turned and walked away, leaving behind a silence filled with more meaning than any goodbye could carry. Ash blinked, slightly puzzled by Jaren's words and his tone. It was unlike him. But before he could think more about it, Lena stepped forward with a small smile. "Don't take it too seriously. He's just really bad at saying goodbyes," she said with a shrug, as if she had seen it happen many times before. "Yeah, seriously. Just stay safe and try not to cause too much trouble," Rek added with a half-hearted grin as he also walked away, tossing Ash a wave over his shoulder. "Take care, Nox. I'm sure we'll meet again someday," Torin said with a nod, giving him a glance filled with quiet understanding before disappearing into the crowd. Ash stood there for a moment watching them go. Then he sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly. They were acting like he wasn't coming back, as if this was some final journey, a one-way path with no return. But that was just how they were. They said goodbye like it was the last time, even when they didn't want to admit it. Maybe that was their way of dealing with fear, by turning it into quiet acceptance. Shaking his head with a small exhale, Ash turned and followed the group that was heading toward the surface. As they walked through the rising tunnels, he passed by several makeshift shelters built into the cave walls. Simple wooden structures, small resting spots, and tents made from stitched cloth. These were places for the workers to sleep or take breaks. They weren't comfortable, but they were good enough to survive in. Not many people chose this kind of life, risking their necks every day just to dig through the earth. But in a world where coin could decide life and death, there were always those willing to take the gamble. As long as money was on the table, someone somewhere would be ready to do anything. Ash kept moving, quietly observing everything, letting the soft hum of mana in the air guide his senses. Eventually, after climbing through the winding path, he stepped out onto the surface. The sunlight touched his skin, warm and clear, and the fresh air wrapped around him like a long-lost friend. Trees swayed in the wind, and the sky above stretched wide, an endless canvas of blue. But what he didn't know was that someone had been silently following him the entire time, moving in the shadows, hidden from sight. Chapter 102. Dragon Continent 3. The surface of the Dragon Continent was wild and full of nature, but there was something special about it. The trees were tall and thick, with their branches spreading wide like open arms. Soft green moss covered the ground, and colorful plants peeked out from behind bushes, giving the forest a quiet, magical feeling. The air was clean and fresh, with a light breeze that carried the scent of flowers and leaves. Birds sang in the distance, and strange animal sounds echoed softly, making the forest feel alive. It wasn't scary, but peaceful in its own way, like a place where time moved slower and everything was in harmony. Even though the land was wild, it had a beauty that made you want to stop and look around forever. Ash soon separated from the others, who were heading in a different direction. They didn't say much, and he didn't feel the need to explain. They had their own path, and so did he. While the group moved toward the east to start their herb collecting, Ash quietly turned away and walked deeper into the forest. His eyes were focused on the mountains far away, standing tall like silent guardians covered in mist. From the information he remembered from the novel, there weren't supposed to be any other creatures around the ruin. But he wasn't foolish enough to blindly believe everything written in that book. After all, novels didn't always cover every little detail, especially things that might not have seemed important to the story. And this world, despite its connection to the novel, was real, far more complex and dangerous than what had been described in just words. According to the scavengers, the group he had traveled with to reach this place, there were many dangerous and unpredictable creatures hiding inside this forest. They had warned him more than once that some of these beings were strong enough to kill him in an instant if he let his guard down. Scavengers was the name of the group Ash had come with, an experienced team that did mining, gathered herbs, and survived by moving through ruins and abandoned zones. Sure, he had the Rune of Life. It gave him a unique advantage, and maybe it would keep his body alive as long as his brain remained unharmed. But even with that, he wasn't the type to rely on luck or powers he didn't fully understand. He didn't want to test the limits of that rune, not unless he absolutely had to. So he continued forward carefully, placing each step with caution. He wasn't skilled enough to sense every presence around him, especially without using Omni-Thought, but for now he had his eyes, and they were more than enough. He trusted his instincts and used his senses to guide him through the dense forest. He scanned his surroundings constantly, paying attention to anything that felt out of place. He avoided narrow paths, watched for shifting shadows, and stayed far from areas where the air felt too still. He moved silently, almost like a shadow himself, weaving through the thick trees without making a sound. Hours passed in this quiet and alert state, and surprisingly, he hadn't encountered even a single monster. For a moment, he wondered if maybe he was just incredibly lucky this time. But deep down, he knew better. Luck had never really favored him, not in this life and definitely not in the one before. And just as expected, trouble found him soon enough. Why is that here? He asked himself silently, keeping his face calm and emotionless. But his heart skipped a beat the moment he laid eyes on the creature ahead. Because sleeping quietly at a distance, resting beneath the soft shade of trees, was something he never imagined he'd witness in real life. Am I actually this lucky? Or are mythical creatures just something normal here on the Dragon Continent? He had no answer to that. He didn't know how rare they truly were, but what he saw right now could only be described as something out of a dream. It was a unicorn. A shiver ran down his spine, and goosebumps rose across his skin as he stared. Even if they're not extinct in this world, they're still considered creatures of legend. Not just here. In his previous life on Earth, unicorns had only existed in fantasy stories, bedtime tales, and myths passed down through generations. And yet here it was. But it's beautiful. He couldn't stop himself from admiring it. The unicorn looked majestic, almost divine. It had the strong, elegant body of a horse, pure white from head to tail, with a single horn rising from its forehead that shimmered in the soft light with a rainbow-like glow. Its tail was long and fluffy, with silky strands of hair that moved gently with the breeze. The entire creature looked like it had been sculpted from light and magic itself. It was sleeping peacefully, surrounded by a soft white glow that faintly shimmered in the air around it. The aura it released seemed to purify the very wind, calming everything nearby, as if the forest itself refused to disturb the creature's peace. No wonder I didn't run into any monsters until now. He had assumed earlier that maybe he had just been lucky, that the beasts had simply been away from the path he walked. But now he understood. It wasn't his luck keeping the forest silent. It was the unicorn. This was its territory, and no monster would dare to set foot here. No predator would risk approaching a creature so powerful, so sacred. And even though only one unicorn stood before him, there are probably more. Unicorns were known to be solitary, but when they took over a place like this, it usually meant others were nearby. Perhaps a mate or maybe even their young. What if this one's the male, and the female, along with their child, is resting somewhere deeper inside? He didn't know why the thought made him uneasy, but it did. The idea that there could be a child nearby made the situation far more dangerous. Because there was one thing he remembered clearly. Unicorns were gentle and peaceful by nature, known for their purity. But if someone tried to harm them, or worse, if someone dared to steal their child, then that unicorn would lose all control. It would go on a rampage, driven by rage and grief, and it wouldn't stop. It would chase the one responsible to the ends of the world, and either it would die or the target would. Ash had absolutely no intention of testing whether that legend was true. Better to leave before anything happens. He held his breath and began to move slowly around the creature, keeping his footsteps quiet and choosing a curved path that wouldn't bring him too close. His goal was simple: avoid being noticed and walk away peacefully. But just as he took a careful step forward, the unicorn's eyes opened. And in that moment, Ash felt like time had frozen. Its eyes were glowing with soft, swirling colors, shades of rainbow that shimmered and moved like liquid light. They didn't look real. They looked like something out of a dream, something that didn't belong in this world. Ash couldn't move. Oh my God! His thoughts screamed in panic, but on the outside, his body stood completely still, frozen in place, staring back into those unreal, glowing eyes. King of unicorns, what kind of cursed luck is this? Unicorns. There wasn't much known about them, except for the fact that they were naturally gentle creatures with the rare ability of purification, healing, and perhaps many other powers that still remained undiscovered. Especially for alchemists and blacksmiths, even the corpse of a unicorn would drive them insane with desire. Its entire body was a treasure, every part useful, every part valuable. The blood of a unicorn was considered a panacea in itself. It had the ability to completely nullify any poison, regardless of how powerful, rare, or ancient that poison might be. In other words, you could basically say that unicorns possessed something that could be called universal poison immunity. As for the other parts of their body, they were equally valuable. Many ingredients needed to create legendary elixirs, those ranked number 1 or 2 in the entire world of Acumia, could only be obtained from a unicorn's remains. Then there was the horn of the unicorn. It had a strange and rare property. It could channel mana in a way no other creature or item could. So if a unicorn's horn was used in the making of a sword or a staff, the mana flowing through that weapon would react and respond much faster. On top of that, some of the destructive properties of ether would naturally blend into those attacks, increasing both their speed and their power. Ether, yes, that strange and unnatural element of nature. Unicorn horns had the unique power to channel destructive ether through them. That alone made unicorns terrifying when provoked, because even a single attack using ether could be deadly enough to kill an opponent of the same rank. But at this moment, Ash was facing an entirely different dilemma. Why is the king here? He questioned it silently in his mind. Out of all the possibilities, why did he have to encounter a unicorn now? And not just any unicorn, but the king of them? Unicorns were separated by 3 distinct types, which could be recognized by the color of their eyes. If it had blue eyes, then it was a male. If it had violet eyes, then it was a female. But if its eyes were rainbow-colored, shimmering with all hues, then that unicorn was the king of the species. Even though only a few of them remain in the world, who would have thought I'd meet a king here of all places? Ash stood there, not knowing what he should do. Just as his thoughts were spiraling, a voice suddenly echoed inside his mind. Human. The moment he heard that voice, Ash's eyes widened. Not just in surprise, but with genuine disbelief. Even his usually calm and blank expression shifted for a moment, showing a trace of shock. And the reason was simple. Did it just speak inside my head? But how is that even possible? Isn't mind communication supposed to be blocked because of the rune of knowledge? Chapter 103, Death. Human. The moment that voice echoed in his mind, Ash's eyes widened. not just in surprise, but in a kind of stunned disbelief that gripped his entire body. Even his usually calm, blank expression shifted slightly, revealing a flicker of shock that rarely broke through his composed face. Did that voice really just speak inside my head? But that shouldn't be possible, right? The rune of knowledge, isn't it supposed to block all forms of mental intrusion? Ash stood still, his mind racing. There had been no mention of other mythical beasts except dragons in the original novel. Not a single clue that creatures like this existed. The only knowledge he had about unicorns came from the books he'd read back in the Academy's library, but it was nothing more than basic information. Before he could gather his thoughts again, the voice returned, low and curious. "Why are your thoughts sealed away from me?" Hearing that, Ash froze on the spot. His heart skipped a beat as he processed those words. Tried to read my thoughts. Unicorns can read minds? But it couldn't read mine? Then the realization hit him like a slap. Right, the rune of knowledge. That has to be it. The rune must have stopped it from digging more deeper into my mind. He swallowed hard just thinking about that, how powerful the king must be to force its voice in his mind. Ash took a cautious breath, trying to keep his voice from trembling. I'm sorry, he said slowly, choosing each word with care. I didn't know someone like you was living here. I didn't mean to disturb your rest or offend you in any way. He bowed, not out of habit or manners, but from a desperate instinct. He had to show this being that he wasn't a threat. But the reply came sharp and cold, without even a second of pause. Someone like me? You speak as if you even understand what I am. Little human. There was something in that voice that cut deeper than anger. It wasn't just irritation. It carried a heavy weight, a tiredness that had built over years, maybe centuries. This wasn't the voice of a wild beast. It was ancient, bitter, and worn down by time. Ash winced slightly, sensing the truth in its tone. This creature wasn't just powerful. It was old, and it had seen more than he could ever imagine. I only know what the books say, Ash admitted, his voice softening, trying not to offend again. That unicorns are sacred, noble beings tied to the elements of purity and ether. That's all I've learned. His words hung in the air, a mix of honesty and hope. Maybe the truth would earn him a little mercy. But the unicorn's voice didn't soften. If anything, it deepened, now filled with something colder than before. Even legends are written with pretty words now. But humans never change. You act like you can understand or claim what was never meant for you. The sentence struck harder than expected, and Ash found himself clenching his jaw as the voice continued, growing heavier with disdain. This glade was untouched for centuries. Even the scaled ones had enough sense to stay away. But now you're here. Another human walking into a place you don't belong, acting like you have the right to be here. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, like thunder gathering behind dark clouds, waiting to strike. And then, slowly, the voice returned. This time it wasn't just curious. It was sharp, suspicious, and dangerously calm. Tell me clearly, what are you? No human has ever blocked their thoughts from me before. Ash's throat felt dry. He knew lying was useless. He could feel it. This monster has no patience for dishonesty. So he did the only thing he could.
I'm Ashburn.
I'm 12. And I didn't come here to fight or take anything. I swear. The silence that followed stretched longer this time. He could feel the weight of the creature's gaze, even if he couldn't see it. Then the voice returned, which was now filled with a strange mix of confusion and hostility. Your name means nothing to me, but there's something wrong with you. You carry a twisted feeling, something that doesn't belong in this world. There's chaos around you. It's not just strange. It's completely unnatural. You were never supposed to exist. Interesting. Are you the one who disturbed the fate? Hearing the voice filled with curiosity and contempt, Ash could feel heavy pressure settle over him, and his mood turned dark, like a cloud hanging low over his head. His heart dropped in his chest. He wasn't exactly scared, but something inside him felt tight and uneasy. It was because he knew deeply that his life wasn't just his own anymore. If he died here, it wouldn't just be the end of him. Alicia would die too, and that thought alone made his chest tighten even more. Even back when he spoke rudely to the saints, even when he challenged them without thinking twice, he didn't feel this kind of tension. Back then, he was sure they wouldn't kill him. But this was different. And wasn't that the whole reason he came here in the first place, was to find a way to escape just in case the elves refused to let him in or decided to kill him on sight? "I didn't come here to harm anything," he said quickly, trying to explain. "Please, just listen." But before he could finish his sentence, the unicorn's horn began to glow. A pulse of shimmering rainbow light erupted from it, cutting through the air like a rippling wave. The once serene clearing, bathed in soft morning light, was now filled with a sudden, rising intensity. The air thickened, charged with energy as the colors in the light seemed to swirl, building in power with each passing moment. Damn! Ash's instincts screamed at him to move, to flee. His heart pounded as the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Every fiber of his being urged him to run, but his body didn't move fast enough. He forced himself into action, tapping into his mana reserves. His core started to overload, the familiar rush of energy filling him like a rising tide. His mind raced, calculating, weighing options, but they all came too late. Because the beam was already on its way. The unicorn's horn pulsed with deadly light, and a beam of destructive rainbow mana shot out, faster than any human eye could track. The force of it was so sudden, so overwhelming, that Ash couldn't even blink before it struck. And then, for a split second, there was nothing but silence. The world around him went still. His mind went blank, every thought wiped away in an instant. There was no time to react, no chance to scream. With a wet, thunderous pop, his skull ruptured, exploded in a horrific, gory splash. Blood and brain matter rained down, coating the flowers and grasses beneath him in a red, viscous spray. The once peaceful clearing, now tainted by the remnants of a boy who had barely time to understand the danger he was in, became an unsettling scene of death. The rainbow beam, as if satisfied by its work, slowly receded. The light faded into silence, leaving only the faintest echo of its destructive force. The air grew still again, the gentle rustling of leaves the only sound left in the aftermath of the carnage. Ash's headless body, a puppet without its strings, crumpled to the ground. His lifeless form fell backward, crashing to the earth with an eerie, final thud. The unicorn, as if uninterested in the scene it had just caused, let out a loud snort. It was the sound of a deep exhale, heavy and dismissive, as if it were simply clearing its conscience after carrying out a task. Mist curled from its nostrils as it flicked its ears, giving one last glance at the remains. Huff! It grunted, and with that, its eyes shut once more. Like an ancient being at peace with itself, it drifted back into its sleep. The life it had ended barely left a mark in the air. Now the fate can return as it was before. With that last thought, everything returned to the stillness it had once held. The breeze resumed its gentle sway, the flowers swayed lazily, and the light, warm and golden, once again bathed the glade in its calm embrace. Time moved forward, oblivious to the fleeting existence that had just been snuffed out. But Ash's death was only a single thread in the larger tapestry of fate. The King of Unicorns had merely reset what Ash's existence had disturbed. Ash's death wasn't just a loss, it was a correction, a necessary void to restore the balance. In every turn of fate, there is a hidden cost. Those who play with its threads, tampering with what was never meant to be touched, may believe they can bend it to their will. But fate always has a way of bending back. When one alters destiny, it will inevitably fight back. And Ash's meddling was no exception. His twisted path, carved by unnatural forces, had met its inevitable end. A death, yes, but also a reset. Chapter 104, Chaos. Runes. What are they? No one really knows. Even in the novel Ash read in his previous world, their origins were never revealed. Maybe the author planned to unveil the truth later, maybe it was a part of some grand twist yet to come, but Ash never lived long enough to reach that point. Now, after transmigrating into this new world, Ash has come across some scattered mentions of the runes in the Academy's old history books. But gathering useful information wasn't easy. The knowledge about the runes were hidden across countless books filled with myths, vague theories, and irrelevant details. Only a few fragments of the books were of any real use. Still, Ash managed to piece something together. With his photographic memory and sharp analytical mind, he connected the dots scattered across dozens of texts. Though what he found couldn't be called truth. Not completely, but it was a theory. A theory built on documents discovered deep within ancient ruins scattered across not just the world, but possibly the entire universe. According to it, in ancient times, the method to fuse with the runes was known to an ancient civilization. That civilization had manifested various ways to harness the rune's power, shaping it into runic magic, intricate spell arrays, powerful formations, and even embedding it into arts like alchemy and blacksmithing. But then came the fall. All those sacred methods were either lost, destroyed, or buried under the ashes of a tragedy that erased the entire ancient civilization in a single night. No one knew what truly happened. A civilization that once thrived with impossible magic and unmatched knowledge vanished without leaving a clear trace. With it, the secrets of the runes, and the individuals that mastered them were buried in silence. In the chaos of their destruction, countless runes were scattered across the universe. Over time, the world moved on. Generations passed. Civilizations rose and fell. People forgot. The myths turned into fairy tales. The truth became fiction, and the memory of the runes faded into nothing more than whispers. But not everything was lost. Over time, fragments of that ancient civilization were rediscovered. Ancient structures, half-decayed records, broken mechanisms still etched with runic symbols. They revealed glimpses of what once existed. Among them, scattered clues pointed to something incredible, something that made scholars and magic users question the very roots of their own magic system. Because according to the limited texts recovered from those ruins, the ancient civilization held a secret so powerful, it could shake the foundation of everything humanity believed. Runes. Finding the information about the runes, the magic scholars of present time were intrigued. They purged everywhere to find the runes, but it was in vain. They did not find them. So they created runic magic imitation according to what they can piece together. Soon more information was discovered. According to the information found in these ruins, that ancient civilization had possession of 20 runes. They were the source of the civilization's unimaginable power. Each rune had been absorbed by one of 20 individuals who stood at the pinnacle of existence, forming a ruling council that led the civilization like gods walking among mortals. Their power was absolute, their authority unmatched. But the civilization received a piece of information that shook their foundation to the core. The source of this information was unknown. Perhaps it was a divine revelation. Perhaps stolen knowledge from a realm beyond reach. Magic scholars didn't know, but what they knew was that ancient civilization was shocked. What truly shook them to their core was the discovery that 25 runes existed in reality. Yes, 5 runes were missing. The ancient civilization, upon discovering this truth, descended into a frenzy. They couldn't accept that their control was incomplete, that power still remained out of their reach. In their desperation, they launched a purge across the universe, scouring galaxies, plundering dimensions, tearing through time itself in search of the remaining 5. Yet despite all their efforts, the missing 5 were never found. And then, as if cursed by their ambition, their civilization fell. Whether they were destroyed in the process or by some unknown force, no one knows. Their theory that 5 more runes remained hidden was never proven, and the truth died with them. Time marched on, and the runes turned into myths, legends told to children, bedtime stories about divine power and forgotten wars. Most people dismissed them as fiction. But not everyone has forgotten. There were still beings, ancient, timeless, and hidden in the folds of the world, who knew the runes were real. beings who remembered what the world had tried to forget. And they were still searching for the runes. Meanwhile, on the Dragon Continent, where Ash's lifeless body rested in silence, something strange was quietly happening. Unaware of it all, the King of Unicorns lay asleep near Ash's body, completely still. He didn't notice the faint ripple in the air, nor the soul of Ash slowly drifting out of his body and floating just above it, soft, transparent, and barely glowing. Ash's soul looked like a hazy version of himself, but his eyes were dull, empty. He wasn't conscious. Whatever was going on, he wasn't aware. He had died, and now, his soul was resting in a deep slumber, lost in silence. But there was something unusual about it. 5 glowing symbols hovered faintly in Ash's soul, their shapes constantly shifting and changing, making it hard to recognize exactly what they were. Like pieces of a forgotten language, like living marks that couldn't stay still. They were runes. Then, without warning, 2 of them suddenly reacted, the rune of life and the rune of stability. They flared up, glowing brighter than the rest. And in that moment, it was as if the world itself paused. Words began to carve themselves into the space around Ash's soul, like they were being written straight into the air, into reality itself. A status window appeared in front of him, even though he wasn't awake, even though he wasn't alive. Checking condition 1, the soul is mutated. Hidden condition 1, fulfilled. Checking condition 2, the soul belongs to a boy aged between 12 and 20. Hidden condition 2, fulfilled. Checking condition 3, the soul carries the rune of life and the rune of stability. Hidden condition 3, fulfilled. Checking condition 4, the soul is bound to the system. Hidden condition 4, not fulfilled. Error detected. Error detected. Process halted. Searching for alternatives. Clause 23 of $$ located. If 3 hidden conditions are fulfilled, process may proceed. Resuming process. Then out of nowhere, the space in front of Ash tore open. Completely silent, completely unseen. Not even the King of Unicorns noticed. It was as if reality itself didn't want anyone to see what was about to happen. From the crack in space, a dark mist flowed out. It wasn't just dark. It was darker than any demonic energy. It filled with death. The mist twisted and coiled until it shaped itself into a strange, ancient-looking symbol. Without hesitation, it sank into Ash's soul. Acquisition of Rune of Death. Confirmed. Rune of Death quietly merged into Ash's soul. The crack in space closed up as if it had never been there, and the words in the air faded away like dust in the wind. Silence returned. Just as that mysterious moment unfolded, far beyond the material world, something even deeper began to unravel. The tangled strings of fate and destiny, those invisible threads crisscrossing like an endless spiderweb stretched across time and reality, started to break apart. Snap, 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 snap. One by one, the threads gave way. The change was so intense, so chaotic, that even the imaginary realm around the web of fate itself began to tremble. It was as if the very blueprint of existence had been struck by a force it couldn't withstand. Fate, in all its ancient wisdom, tried to correct the sudden distortion. It tried to weave the strings back, to stabilize the pattern, to make things right. But Ash, completely unaware of what he had done, had already thrown everything into deeper chaos. His presence alone, or rather, his soul's transformation, had shattered the balance even further. And now the web was such a mess, such an entangled disaster, that even those who could once peek through its secrets dared not try. Not that they ever could see clearly when it came to him, because from the very beginning, Ash had been an anomaly. "It's a mess," an old man muttered quietly under his breath. He sat motionless, cross-legged in the void, deep in meditation. Blood streamed slowly from his nose, his eyes, his mouth, and even his ears, yet he didn't flinch. His breathing was steady, calm, almost unnaturally focused. Even with the pain threatening to break him, His eyes remained shut. "Everything is twisted," he whispered. That anomaly ruined the entire order of things. His voice was low, strained, but heavy with knowing. He wasn't just speaking out loud, he was laying down truth. Now even those arrogant angels will feel it. Those high and mighty beings, always watching from their heavenly palaces, always searching for the runes across realms. They'll sense this shift too, just like the demons. They'll come crawling out, trying to trace the origin of the disturbance. He took a long, sharp breath, blood trickling down his chin. His words carried weight like a prophet writing history before it happened. But they won't find anything, not this time, because the only method they had, the only way they could track something from afar was through fate itself. And fate doesn't work on an anomaly. He smiled bitterly. And now that the web of fate is in this state, anyone who tries to use it will suffer backlash, just like me. His voice was quiet, like a man speaking to ghosts. They'll send scouts, angels in disguise, warriors across the universe. They'll try to search manually now, chasing shadows in every world. The old man's head tilted slightly upward, as if he was seeing something no one else could. It's all getting worse. Sure, in a way, it's a blessing. Those angels won't focus their attention on Ecumia now. But if they do descend into this world, then for the world's sake, he better remain silent. He better stay hidden. He must do nothing that draws their eyes. He stood up slowly. The air shifted around him. I need to find him before they descends. Who knows what kind of mess the anomaly might cause next. And with those words, the old man, the seer of fate, the whisperer and Amelia's grandfather, vanished from the void without a trace. His destination, Starlight Academy. Chapter 105, Resurrection. "Who did you kill this time?" A soft but sharp female voice echoed through the clearing. Upon hearing the voice, the king of unicorns, Salareth, slowly raised his head. His gaze fell on the figure of his mate walking gracefully toward him through the forest. She was slightly smaller in stature than Salareth. Upon her white, graceful head shimmered 3 horns, the central one long and proud, while the 2 smaller ones at front and back of the middle horn. They glowed with the rainbow hue and her eyes burned with a deep violet color. Her entire form radiated a strange, divine purity. Her horse-like body was a flawless white, unmarred, as if sculpted from light itself. There was a strange sense of divine purity in the way her presence seemed to cleanse the very air around her. Just as Salareth bore the trait of rainbow-colored eyes, a mark of the Unicorn King, his queen, Lumiel, bore the sacred trait of the triple horn. It was a human child, the one who tampered with fate, Salareth replied calmly, his voice carrying a weight of finality and wisdom. "Father!" Before another word could be spoken, a small unicorn, barely the size of a regular dog, came bounding toward him, his tiny hooves kicking up bits of mist. He shouted with all the enthusiasm of youth, his voice pure and untouched by the harshness of the world. Atop his small head was a budding horn, just starting to form its spiral. His eyes gleamed with a rainbow sheen, a symbol of his bloodline and future as king. Seeing his child running toward him with such unrestrained joy brought a rare, warm smile to Salareth's face. That small moment of innocence softened his hardened expression. "I see. Well, it doesn't matter who it was, but you should have at least cleaned up the scene. How will it affect our child to see something like this lying around?" Lumiel spoke without emotion, her gaze flickering over the lifeless body of Ash lying nearby, blood still pooling beneath him. She spoke not out of judgment for the act of killing. No, she was long past such sentiments, but out of concern for her child's heart and the memories it would carry. "I didn't expect you to come here with him," Salareth replied as he gently leaned down to lick his child's face. The young unicorn giggled uncontrollably, laughing in pure delight at the affection, completely unaware of the grimness behind his father's gentle touch. Lumiel shook her head at Salareth's lack of foresight and walked toward the body, intending to finish what had begun and erase the remains of the human boy once and for all. However, just as she focused her intent, she froze. A strange sensation, alien and ancient, washed over her like an icy wave. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper, something primal. Death. Not the concept. Not the act of dying. No, this was death itself. Salaretha's instincts screamed at him, and he immediately moved in front of his child, shielding him with his body. The young unicorn, sensing something terrifying beyond comprehension, trembled and hid behind his father's legs, eyes wide with unspoken dread. Their gazes locked on the body that had been lying lifeless just moments ago. Ash's corpse. It was now floating above the ground, suspended in silence. The blood and broken pieces of his brain that had spilled onto the earth moments ago began to stir. Slowly, they rose into the air, moving in reverse, like time itself was unwinding. The tissue, the blood, the fragments, they returned, knitting themselves back into the skull with eerie precision. Neither Salareth nor Lumiel dared to move. Not because of fear, they were kings and queens of a proud and ancient race, but because they felt it. Presence beyond comprehension. This wasn't magic. This wasn't a miracle. This was death revealing its truest form. How could one interfere casually with such a thing? Before their eyes, Ash's body reformed, whole and unbroken. The stillness in the air was suffocating, charged with something older than time. Even as creatures who had walked the world for centuries, they had never seen anything like it. Not even the dragons possessed such a terrifying, unnatural power. Phoenixes, with their flames of rebirth, could have this power of resurrection. But they were also almost near extinction. Finding one now was akin to searching for a single grain of stardust in an endless, formless ocean. Then, Ash opened his eyes, and everything stilled. What happened? That was the first thought to cross Ash's mind as the weightless darkness clung to him like fog. He killed me, didn't he? He recalled the moment. He had been speaking, and then suddenly his mind went blank. He couldn't even remember the pain, only the abruptness of it all. Now, here he was, floating in a strange, infinite darkness. A place where time had no meaning and thoughts echoed endlessly. But despite dying, Ash's mind remained unnaturally calm. Unnaturally so. The rune of stability was at work, anchoring his soul in balance even in the face of death. So what now? His thoughts drifted, against his will, to Alicia, or perhaps Nancy. In both lives, the echo of failure lingered, whispering guilt into his heart. Even now, I couldn't protect her. That what if clung to him like a shadow, coiling in the corners of his heart. But before the spiral could take root, the darkness around him receded and light took its place. His eyes opened. Blink, blink. The first thing he saw was the unicorn who had killed him, Salareth, standing still, along with another unicorn by his side, and a third, smaller one peeking from behind. What is going on? Ash's mind reeled as he tried to make sense of it. Why was he here? Why was he still standing? He looked around and realized something that sent a shiver down his spine. He was standing in the exact same spot where he had died. The ground where his blood had pooled was now pristine. Before he could say or do anything, his system interface appeared, automatically without being summoned. His heart skipped a beat as he read the notifications that popped up one after another. Could my theory have been true? If not, then this doesn't make any sense at all. The pieces began to click, the fragmented knowledge he had gathered from countless books. There was only one explanation that even remotely fit what had happened to him. A rune that was never mentioned in the novel. A rune that even that ancient civilization did not find. The rune of death. Ash's thoughts scattered for a moment. His mind caught in a haze as if the surrounding air had grown heavy with silence. A strange pressure hung over the space like storm clouds ready to burst, and instinctively, his eyes lifted. Only to meet two pairs of eyes staring at him, cold and unreadable, as if trying to peer into his very soul. Without hesitation, acting purely on instinct, he activated Omni-Thought. The change was immediate and overwhelming. His mind shifted into overdrive, like a sudden surge of power flipping a hidden switch. Everything around him slowed, as if time itself had paused, and thoughts began to race in quick succession, layered one after another in perfect clarity. So, now what exactly is going on here? He tried to breathe evenly, trying not to lose his grip on reality as he gave himself time to think. That's why he had used Omni-Thought to make sense of this surreal moment. Without wasting a second, he opened his status window, the familiar blue screen appearing before him like a silent companion. Status: name Ashburn. Race human. Age 12. Class magic swordsman. Unique. Rank novice. F rank. 89%. Affinity, lightning, life, death. Attributes: strength, 171. Agility, 171. Vitality, 171. Intelligence, 171. Stamina, 171. Charm, 171.
Mana 171, X2.
Traits: Codex of Creation, novice rank. Primordial Core, incomplete. Rank dash. Skills: Omni-Thought. Runes: Rune of Stability, Rune of Knowledge, Rune of Life, Rune of Balance, Rune of Concealment, Rune of Death. As Ash looked at the familiar window, his eyes locked onto the unfamiliar words nestled among the runes. It's just as I thought. Back when he was only a reader, not yet part of this world, he often wondered about things others might overlook. One such thought lingered in his memory: if a rune of life existed, then shouldn't there also be a rune of death to balance it out? The very thing he once guessed had quietly embedded itself into his reality. His eyes drifted toward the affinity section as well, where a new addition had silently appeared: death. Still, he chose to ignore it for now, not because it was unimportant, but because it wouldn't help him in this exact moment. That was something he'd deal with later, once he understood more. With a flick of thought, he opened the details of the Rune of Death, hoping it would provide the answers he needed. At the same time, he also noticed that another strange symbol had appeared on both of his primordial cores. Rune of Death. Description: as a bearer of death itself, death doesn't come to you. Ash stared at the screen, eyebrows furrowed in deep thought. The description was short, far too short. It lacked the detailed explanations the other runes had provided him in the past. There were no visible effects, no abilities, not even a hint at how it could be used. It was vague, almost like a riddle waiting to be solved. Bearer of death? What exactly does that mean? Death doesn't come to me? Does that imply I can't die? Or does it mean I can return from death again and again? Is there a limit to how many times it works? Or does it make me truly immortal? His thoughts spiraled, chasing one possibility after another, yet he knew deep down that no immediate answer would come. There were still too many unknowns, and this rune didn't seem like one that revealed its truths easily. Understanding that speculation would only lead him in circles, Ash slowly deactivated Omni-Thought and returned to the present, where time began to flow normally once again. His eyes met those of the unicorn couple, calm and unwavering. There was no fear in him anymore. He didn't know if this new power would make him immortal or unkillable, but just the possibility that he could revive endlessly. That alone shifted everything. If it's true I can come back from death, again and again, then everything changes. Chapter 106, Madness. Starlight Academy. Alice was in deep meditation inside Alicia's room in the infirmary. It had become her usual routine, something she did without fail each day. For the past 3 weeks, she had been quietly looking after Alicia. In the beginning, many people came by to visit the unconscious girl, bringing with them concern and flowers. But as time passed, the number of visitors gradually decreased. Eventually, no one came anymore. With fewer people to attend to, Alice's responsibilities also began to shrink. Other than the nurse, who arrived once every day to clean and inspect Alicia's body, the room remained mostly silent. Occasionally, Ray would stop by. His visits never lasted long, and recently they had become even rarer. She had heard that he was pushing himself harder than ever in training, likely trying to distract himself from the uncertainty surrounding Alicia. Alice remained in her meditative state, breathing slowly and evenly, until a sudden jolt struck her heart like a bolt of lightning. Her entire body tensed as a sharp, cold sensation ran through her spine, breaking her focus instantly. Her eyes opened, not in surprise, but in quiet sorrow. "What a pity! That young lad died," Alice muttered to herself, her voice soft but steady, almost emotionless, though her eyes carried the weight of what she felt. Her words were not based on a vague feeling or some emotional instinct. The reason was simple: her mana contract with Ash had just been shattered. The contract, created between her and Ash, was formed not out of sentiment, but as a practical measure. It served as a monitoring link, a subtle thread that would inform her of any sudden changes to his life force. A contract like that only breaks if one of the parties dies. And now that bond had been severed. "I suppose this outcome was the most predictable one," she whispered, her tone more thoughtful than mournful. Her expression didn't change much, but her eyes held a quiet storm of thoughts. She sat there silently, staring at the still, unmoving body of Alicia that lay peacefully in the bed. A part of her felt the weight of the decision she had made when forming that contract. Not out of interest, not out of care, but out of calculation. Now that the contract was broken, she quietly asked herself, "So then, what should I do now?" Her gaze lingered on Alicia for a few seconds longer before she slowly shook her head and closed her eyes. "I should inform Nicole first." Without another word, Alice vanished from the room like a whisper carried away by the wind. As this was happening silently on one continent, far away in a completely different part of the world, Ash, who had no idea that the mana contract he made with Alice had already been broken, stood tall and still, his expression unreadable. His gaze was fixed on the King and Queen of Unicorns. He looked into their eyes without a trace of hesitation or fear, even though he was fully aware that these beings had the power to erase him from existence in a mere moment. "You killed me without even listening to." Before he could finish the sentence, Salaretha's eyes glowed, and in the very next moment, Ash's skull exploded once again. His head burst apart like a fragile object shattering under immense pressure, splattering blood and bone in the air. But something was different now. His body didn't fall this time. It remained standing, still and upright, because now the power of his rune of death had activated. It wouldn't let him die. And while the rune of death prevented his soul from leaving his body, the rune of life began its work. It started mending every shattered bone, every torn muscle, and every destroyed organ with terrifying precision, rebuilding his head and healing his body as if time itself had reversed. He had died again, but he had also come back. Ash opened his eyes slowly. A chill passed through his body, not from the cold, but from the deep realization that he had just experienced death again. Not figuratively, but literally. Yet even in the face of that truth, he took a step forward. He walked with more confidence. With each breath, he carried the weight of that experience. His steps echoed in the silence, quiet but full of defiance. "I know!" Splat! Once again his skull ruptured. Blood sprayed. His head burst apart. And yet, just like before, it healed. Flesh grew back. Bones reshaped themselves. The pain was real, but so was the revival. "You are angry." Splat! More blood splattered across the air. His eyes vanished for a second, then returned as his head reformed once more, refusing to stay broken. "Because someone uninvited came into your domain. You are angry especially because of your child." Splat! His entire body shook. The sound of bones snapping echoed again. But the runes inside him didn't allow him to die. "You don't want anyone near him. You see threats in every corner." Splat! His head exploded again. "Because you've already lost someone before, haven't you?" This time, the silence that followed was different. His voice returned, slower, more thoughtful. "You think if you lose him too, your entire world might collapse. You're afraid." Splat! "But I'm not your enemy." Splat! "And I also have someone I want to protect. Hearing that strange silence filled the surroundings, but it was broken by Ash's steps. He didn't stop, he continued walking towards them. Not even when his mind cracked under the pain he was feeling. Someone whose smile makes my entire world feel real. Still, Salareth didn't stop his attacks. Splat! Despite the urge to throw up and the psychological pressure of dying so many times, Ash still walked. I'm not here to harm your son. Splat! Ash staggered forward, each step shaky but determined. Blood trickled from the corner of his lips, and though his skull was still in the process of reforming itself, he refused to slow down or stop. I was just passing by, he said, his voice hoarse yet steady. If you let me go, I'm willing to form a contract right now. One that binds me to silence about your presence here. I won't speak a word. Seeing that Salareth was again about to attack, Lumiel came forward to stop this madness. Stop, Salareth. That's enough. Lumiel's voice trembled, barely holding itself together. Her eyes were wide with horror, unable to bear the sight of what was unfolding right in front of her. What do you mean stop? You know how dangerous Dash. Shut up, she snapped, cutting him off. Just look at him. Look how scared Eric is right now. Her words cut through the air like a blade. Startled, Salareth's gaze dropped. He saw Eric, standing frozen in place, eyes overflowing with tears, his small frame shaking uncontrollably from fear. And in that moment, it felt as though a million invisible needles pierced straight through Salareth's chest. Something inside him cracked. Take him away, he said through the mental link, his voice low and strained. Lumiel immediately nodded and, in a flash of light, disappeared from the scene with Eric in her mouth. But just before leaving, her gaze lingered, drawn to Ash, who stood alone, bloodied from head to toe. Yet his eyes remained like unmoving frost, cold and devoid of expression. That blank, broken stare sent a chill running down her spine. She didn't fear him because of his strength. No, in truth, he was still very weak compared to them. What terrified her was the look in his eyes. Eyes that didn't care about consequences. Eyes that had accepted pain, death, and madness without flinching. Mad enough to walk straight into death itself without hesitation, even when escape was an option. It wasn't his power she feared. It was his resolve. Taking one last glance, she vanished with Eric, leaving only silence in her wake. Now only Salareth and Ash remained. Salareth's gaze returned to Ash, who had now stopped walking, standing just a few steps away. The path behind him was littered with blood, brain matter, and fragments of flesh, clear evidence of how many times his body had died and then regenerated during this march forward. It was disturbingly similar to that first time Ash had been brought back, when time itself had seemed to twist, bringing him back from death. But this time it wasn't the work of time or miracles. His body had regenerated each time from scratch, as if rejecting the very concept of dying. Salareth stared into Ash's eyes. Neither of them spoke, but the silence was heavy. And within that silence, Salareth noticed it, the defiance burning in the boy's gaze. Defiance not just against him, but against the entire world, against fate itself. He didn't understand why Ash's eyes looked like that. What could make a child carry such weight behind his gaze? Then finally, Ash broke the silence, his voice hoarse and almost cracking. So, can I leave now? His words were slow and dragged, as if each syllable hurt to speak. He hadn't used Omni-Thought to block out the pain. He hadn't used Omni-Thought to suppress his suffering. He didn't want to. He had chosen to feel it all. Every second of agony. Because he wanted to remember. He wanted to understand the pain Alicia must have gone through in her previous life. Salareth opened his mouth to respond, but before he could say anything, Ash's body tilted forward and collapsed. But before he could hit the ground, a soft rainbow hue enveloped him. His unconscious body began to float, gently suspended in the air. Salareth let out a long, tired sigh as he looked at the boy's battered form. What a troublesome lad, he muttered under his breath, his voice a mix of annoyance and reluctant admiration. Chapter 107, Cause-Va Effect. Mike POV. He had always been a simple thief. Not the grand kind who stole royal treasures or made it into the legends. He had stolen many things in his life, slipping in and out of places without anyone remembering his face. But none of the things he stole were precious enough to make him famous or feared. He was just another shadow in a world full of criminals. But that changed the day he got caught. He had attempted to steal a rare artifact from a mid-sized guild. It wasn't some kingdom-level treasure, but still valuable enough to invite real trouble. The moment they discovered him, the chase began. Fearing for his life, he disappeared from the public eye and dove into the underbelly of the world, the black market. That was when he got introduced to a special group called the Scavengers, people who were tasked with mining and herb gathering, also in charge of stealing ancient and valuable items from the Dragon Continent itself. Since his class was that of a real thief, someone skilled in infiltration, escape, and deception, he quickly proved useful. He could sneak into places without being noticed, trick people, and vanish before anyone realized what was missing. That was probably why the captain chose him specifically to follow Nox. But now, he was full of regret. What is that? What is this monster? His mind was in such shock that he couldn't even process his thoughts properly. His whole body stiffened just from watching. Just seeing the unicorn was enough to shake him. If this kind of news got out to the world, he knew that many of the old monsters hiding within the black market would come forward, not to admire it, but to hunt it down. He thought for a moment, if he was the one to bring this information to them first, his position would rise. Maybe he would be promoted. Maybe he would finally be recognized. But then, his eyes fell on Nox. The boy's head was literally bursting apart with every step he took forward, and for some reason, watching it made Mike's chest tighten in pain. He felt as though he himself was being torn apart, like he was the one suffering through that unbearable agony. His body began to tremble, not from the cold, but from the overwhelming pressure that the unicorn was releasing. And it wasn't even doing anything. It was just standing there, yet Ash's body was being destroyed again and again, as if his very existence was being rejected. Mike started to get the feeling that he had seen something he shouldn't have, and that scared him more than anything. His instincts screamed at him that his life was now in danger. He decided to turn around and leave. He couldn't stay here any longer. He needed to escape, quietly, quickly. But before he could even move, he felt his body freeze. And then, he started floating. No, not this, not now. Despair filled his heart and fear clouded his mind. His eyes widened in panic as his body was pulled against his will, drifting helplessly through the air, straight toward Solareth. And when he finally arrived in front of the king, all he could do was stare. Solareth's eyes were beautiful. Far too beautiful for this world. But instead of calming him, they filled Mike with fear. Behind those stunning eyes, he could feel nothing but death and endless power. Then, a voice echoed inside his mind. I see. So this child came here in search of ruins. Seems I was far too cautious. Solareth's voice wasn't loud, yet it rang deep within Mike's very soul. The king was reading him, his thoughts, his memories, every secret he had buried. He couldn't hide anything. It was as if his entire mind had been torn open and put on display. Solareth saw it all: Mike's talks with Captain Jack, the black market's involvement, the missions, the secrets, everything. It was all laid bare. Feeling his soul completely exposed before this creature, Mike cursed Captain Jack in his heart. He cursed him for sending him here, for dragging him into something way beyond what he could handle. But to think the black market would send their people to the Dragon Continent. I don't know if they're fearless or just incredibly foolish. Well, whatever. And with those final words, Mike's entire body exploded. There was no time to scream. No time to even process what was happening. His body didn't just break apart, it disintegrated completely. Not even blood was left behind. The sheer force of Solareth's power erased every trace of him from existence. The king glanced around once more and, with a flick of his will, the entire area was cleaned of blood and residue, as if nothing had ever happened. And with Ash still floating silently beside him, Solareth turned and calmly left the place, his presence fading into the wind. "So, you're saying he's dead?" Nicole asked quietly, his voice almost drowned by the weight of his own thoughts, as his eyes remained fixed on Alice, who simply responded with a small, knowing smile. "Dead." The single word was spoken softly, but it echoed loud in the room. Hearing her confirm it, Nicole let out a long sigh, his gaze lowering slightly as he murmured, "What a pity." A strange, heavy silence spread across the room, like a fog. Nicole sat behind his desk, surrounded by the quiet familiarity of his office, while Alice lounged casually on the sofa nearby, legs crossed, seemingly unaffected by the news they had just discussed. After a long pause, Nicole finally asked, "So, what are you going to do now?" Alice leaned back, her voice light, almost playful. "Naturally, I'll go back. The contract is void now. There's no point staying here any longer." She glanced at him. "In fact, I should be asking you, what are you planning to do?" Nicole exhaled again, more deeply this time, a question he hadn't quite found the answer to yet. "What indeed?" "I'm going to do nothing," he finally said, his tone quiet but firm. "Even if I have the power, I don't have the right to decide the course of another's life or death. If, by some miracle, she survives. You and I both know that's just wishful thinking." Alice interrupted coldly, her voice cutting through his sentence like a blade. Nicole fell silent, unable to argue. Not because he agreed, but because there was truth in her words. A truth he didn't want to face. Alice stood, brushing non-existent dust from her coat as she turned toward the door. "Well, whatever. I'll be leaving then. There's nothing interesting left to watch here." She opened the door without another word, but stopped immediately. Right outside, frozen mid-knock, stood an old man. Alice's breath caught in her throat. From every angle, he looked like any ordinary elder you might pass by in the street. Plain robes, hunched shoulders, weathered skin. But his eyes were what stopped her. His irises rotated slowly in the shape of an ancient wheel, glowing faintly with an ethereal light. It was as if those eyes could see through flesh, bone, thought, and soul. For a split second, Alice felt like she was standing completely exposed, like all her masks and secrets had been stripped away without permission. Nicole had already risen from his seat, eyes wide with recognition. And then, in perfect, stunned unison, both Alice and Nicole whispered the same name. "Elder?" Seeing the old man, both Nicole and Alice stood frozen, unable to hide the shock in their eyes. They weren't surprised because he looked threatening. No, from every angle, he looked like an ordinary old man you might pass by without a second glance. But they knew better. They understood what his presence truly meant. Because those who walked the path of fate were always bound by causality. Even if they could peer into countless futures, they were bound. Even if they held the power to wipe out cities with a thought, they were still trapped. They couldn't act freely, and they couldn't even leave the places they were tied to. They could watch fate shift, feel timelines twist, but they couldn't act. Not without consequence. That was the curse. Power so great that it came with chains. The power that let them see was also a curse that chained them in place. And if they did try to change something, they had to pay a price. And that price could be anything: memories, life, soul, or even something they couldn't name. That was why both of them were stunned to see the Whisperer here, the oldest among all the beings they knew. A man whose true strength and limits had never been known. "It's been a long time," the old man said with a calm smile, his voice warm and steady, like he was greeting familiar faces after a long walk. His words broke their frozen state. Both Nicole and Alice bowed their heads. Not out of fear, but out of respect. He wasn't a ruler or a god, but a guardian. A silent protector who had watched over the world even when no one knew his name. Even now, when no one asked for it, he continued to protect everything. "It's good to see you both are doing well," he added, still smiling gently. But Nicole couldn't stay calm. His heart was already filled with unease. He knew something was wrong. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice quiet but taut with dread. He knew the answer would not be a pleasant one. So he asked directly, unable to hold back. And the old man gave a simple answer. The threads of fate have been tampered with. Causality is weakening. Cause and effect are no longer absolute. He didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. That one sentence carried enough weight to shake heaven and earth. Nicole and Alice both felt their chests tighten. A cold chill ran through their bodies. Because they knew what it meant. If the cause and effect had weakened, if the laws of fate had started to break down, then the world was on the edge of something terrible. Something no one could stop. Chapter 108, Eyes of Fate. Does Elder know what is the cause of this change? Alice asked, her expression unusually serious, her voice laced with both urgency and restraint. The whisperer turned his gaze towards her, his ancient eyes calm yet unreadable. Indeed, he said, his tone quiet but firm. I know the cause. The moment those words left his lips, a visible shift came over both Nicole and Alice. Their expressions, once shadowed by confusion, brightened with relief and anticipation. Without wasting a second, they leaned forward, voices overlapping in their haste. Elder, just tell us who it is. We promise. We'll do everything we can to eliminate him. Watching the two saints speak with such eagerness, like overexcited children chasing answers they were never meant to hold, the old man's lips curled into a faint smile. For a moment, his mind drifted to the days long past, when these two stood before him as wide-eyed students, clumsy and curious, brimming with questions and dreams. But that nostalgic warmth quickly faded when their words, "Eliminate the anomaly," sank in fully. His smile disappeared. The kindness in his eyes was replaced with an icy stillness. He looked at them, and in a voice devoid of emotion, issued a command that carried the weight of countless years. You are not allowed to harm even a single hair on his body. The room fell silent. Both Nicole and Alice froze, stunned. Their minds raced to find something to say, some way to argue. But the way Elder looked at them now, with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, made them feel like they were standing before something far older and far greater than any saint. And more terrifyingly, for the first time since their childhood, they felt something they had never experienced from him: anger. Despite the pressure, they dared to speak, choosing their words as delicately as possible, fearing that even a whisper too loud might spark his fury. If Elder says so, we will comply, Nicole said cautiously, his voice soft and uncertain. But may we at least know the reason behind it? For a moment there was no reply. Then the old man's gaze softened, ever so slightly, and he exhaled a breath that sounded like it had traveled through centuries. I cannot tell you, he said, shaking his head slowly, because what you seek touches matters beyond your understanding. Matters of life and death, of fate and destiny, of chaos and order. Even if the causality has weakened, these things should not be discussed so lightly. Nicole and Alice exchanged confused glances. The old man continued, his voice gaining weight and rhythm, as though delivering a forgotten lesson carved into the bones of the world. It has only weakened, he said again. And tell me, what do you think fate truly is? Do you believe something as vast and ancient as destiny can be damaged so deeply by the actions of just one person? If you think that is possible, then perhaps you are long overdue for another one of my lessons. His tone grew sharper, more instructive, like that of a mentor disappointed in his brightest pupils. The threads of fate have only been cut and twisted at an alarming rate. This disturbance has caused the weakening of causality. But to think that fate itself has been defeated, that is nothing but wishful thinking born from pride. His words struck them like the cold wind of truth. Nicole and Alice felt a familiar chill run down their spines. It was the same feeling they had as young students, sitting before him during a difficult lecture they could barely understand. Fate, the old man said slowly, his voice dropping into something deeper, is like a spring. The more you stretch it, the more fiercely it will snap back. You may bend it, twist it, even sever it in places, but you cannot escape its wrath forever. For one, fate cannot kill directly, but that does not make it powerless. It can shape the world around the one who defies it, twist events, sow misfortune, curse every step they take. And in the end, death may still find them, not by its hand, but by its design. Fate, he declared, each syllable a thunderclap, is supreme. If you wish to defy it, you must become something greater than what you are. You must become supreme yourself. He looked them both in the eye, and for the first time, they sensed doubt flicker in his ancient gaze. But who can truly become supreme? His next words fell like a whisper, and yet carried the weight of a divine truth. Not even those angels, not even they dare to say they can become supreme. Hearing his words that were filled with wisdom and deep insight, Alice and Nicole felt as if their minds were being peeled open, layer by layer. It was like something invisible had shifted, revealing a truth they had never been able to comprehend before. Alice then chimed in, her tone uncertain yet hopeful. Does that mean we don't have to do anything anymore? That fate itself will punish or kill him for what he did? The old man let out a long sigh, one that carried exhaustion and quiet sorrow. You all are so focused on killing, on destruction. I truly do not know when your innocence disappeared. Back then, you would have asked if he needed help, not whether he should be killed. Perhaps, in the end, I failed as a teacher. Hearing the elder blame himself so openly, both Alice and Nicole felt their hearts tighten. The heaviness in his voice struck something inside them. They couldn't bring themselves to reply. Instead, they lowered their heads in shame, remaining silent like students being scolded by a teacher they still deeply respected. The old man looked at them, and after a moment, he spoke again, though his voice was now gentler, carrying the weight of something deeper. I cannot tell you everything, but listen closely. We have to find him. Not to eliminate him, not to punish him, but to protect him, to make sure he doesn't die. There was a long pause as his words settled into the quiet room, and then he continued, his expression unreadable. Even though I do not know whether his interference with fate was intentional or purely accidental, the impact of his actions is already irreversible. The destinies of countless individuals have been altered because of him. And even if he were to die now, the damage that has been done cannot be undone. The fates that were rewritten cannot simply go back to what they once were. After all, if he dies now, the world itself will collapse in the future. The fate of the world was not rewritten, only deviated ever so slightly. And if this world is destroyed, I will never be able to fulfill the promise I made to that person. The old man's thoughts drifted as he stood in silence, his eyes filled with memories of a time long past. He found himself thinking of his younger days, of the solemn vow he had once made, a vow so important that even centuries had not been able to erase it from his mind. Even though hundreds of years had passed, the weight of that promise still remained heavy on his heart, as if it had been made only yesterday. But before he could lose himself completely in those memories, a familiar voice called out, gently pulling him back to the present. If the elder says so, then we shall not harm even a single strand of hair on him, Nicole said, though confusion still lingered in his voice. His brows furrowed slightly as he continued. But even so, to find him, wouldn't Elder be far more capable than either of us? The old man let out a soft sigh, then gave a bitter smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Even I cannot find him, he said, his voice low, as if weighed down by the burden of truth. Nor can I divine anything about his future. It's as though he walks cloaked beneath a veil, one that blocks every gaze, every attempt to peer into the fate surrounding him. He paused, then looked toward the horizon, eyes distant, thoughtful. I do not know what that veil is or where it came from, but his meddling with fate, while reckless, has created something that didn't exist before: hope. A slim, fragile thread of it, no doubt. Yet I believe, if nurtured with time, it may grow strong enough to become this world's salvation. That's why finding him is of the utmost importance. That's also the reason I sent my granddaughter here. But the recent attacks by demons were something even I hadn't foreseen. Hearing this, Alice, despite knowing it might come across as disrespectful, couldn't hold back her question. She stepped forward slightly and interrupted. Wait, does that mean the anomaly is actually inside the academy? The old man showed no sign of offense. Instead, he nodded slowly, speaking in a calm, steady tone. Yes, he is here within these walls. I believe he's the same unknown I've heard so much about lately. The moment that word left his mouth, unknown, both Alice and Nicole froze, their eyes widening in disbelief. It was one thing to know the anomaly was within the academy, but to discover he was the same figure they themselves had labeled a criminal, it felt like a punch to the gut. Shame began to creep in, gnawing at the edges of their pride. Sensing the shift in their mood, the old man simply smiled. It was a soft, knowing smile, one that held no anger, only quiet understanding. It doesn't matter how you treated him up until now. Life is built on regrets. We cannot turn back time, no matter how much we wish to. All we can do is learn from those regrets, carry them forward, and work harder in the present to shape a better future. Hearing that, both Alice and Nicole nodded, finally understanding the weight behind his words. In their hearts, they silently resolved to remove the criminal notice placed on the unknown. Still, Alice voiced the lingering concern that remained in both of their minds. But Elder, how will we find him now? No one knows who he really is. The old man, sensing the lull, broke the silence with a calm voice that carried the gravity of centuries. Isn't that precisely why I came here myself? He said, his tone soft but resolute. I cannot trace him through fate. His presence slips through the threads like water through fingers. And until now, I had been bound, unable to leave my place due to the constraints of causality itself. He looked toward the distant mountains, the glow of the sky catching faintly in his eyes. But now, causality has weakened, and because of the unique gift I possess, these eyes of fate, I will be able to recognize the anomaly the moment I see him with my own eyes. Upon hearing that, both Alice and Nicole felt as though a curtain had been lifted from their minds. Enlightenment washed over them, and before long, soft smiles bloomed on their faces. Then, Elder, you may have to wait a few more days, Nicole said gently, his voice lighter now. Many of the students left the academy during the demon attacks. They're only now beginning to return. The old man gave a slow nod, his expression serene. Then I shall wait, he replied. For the wheel of fate turns for all, and I believe it will soon bring him before me. Chapter 109. Baby food? I feel like my head is getting split open. Ash grumbled inwardly, pressing his eyes shut as the headache pulsed harder, like something was hammering against his skull from the inside. Right? I died so many times. Around 10, maybe. I don't really know. But that bastard was truly heartless. He actually killed me over and over again without a shred of hesitation. Cursing Solareth in his thoughts, Ash slowly blinked his eyes open, the blurry world around him coming into focus. The very first thing that greeted his senses. Saliva. Ash barely had time to react before the warm, sticky liquid slipped into his mouth, making him gag. His body jerked upward on reflex, his chest heaving as he began coughing violently. Cough! Cough! His entire body trembled as the coughing fit took over, and to make matters worse, he even ended up vomiting a little, the bitter taste stinging his throat as his stomach churned. After a few seconds passed and his breathing somewhat calmed down, he finally lifted his head, his gaze narrowing at the creature responsible for that disgusting ambush. His eyes burned with anger and disbelief, ready to explode at the next second. But as soon as he actually turned and got a proper look, a forced smile awkwardly bloomed on his face. "Haha, it wasn't really my taste, so don't take it to heart," he said with a weak chuckle, trying to play it off. But deep inside, a cold sweat was already trailing down his back. Because inside the small, dimly lit, cave-like room, there was a man who looked like he was in his 20s, casually sitting on a slow-swinging wooden chair. He wore a simple, plain white robe, something you wouldn't give a second glance at, and from the surface he looked completely normal, like an everyday human being. That is, if you ignored his eyes. They shimmered like flowing liquid, made of every color imaginable, constantly shifting and swirling like melted rainbows caught in a never-ending dance. On his lap sat a small unicorn, no bigger than a dog. Its eyes were half closed in contentment, and from the corner of its mouth, thick strands of saliva were still dripping, as if it had just discovered a delicious snack it didn't want to share. Ash looked between the two of them, the so-called father and son duo, and felt an overwhelming urge to scream or curse out loud. He's not going to kill me again just because I puked on the floor, right? But before Ash could even finish that thought in his mind, the man suddenly spoke in a calm, curious voice that felt both casual and strangely probing. "No matter how many times I see you," he began, tilting his head slightly as if observing something curious, "you really are unusual. I can't read anything from you." There was a pause, and then his gaze sharpened, the rainbow eyes glinting faintly in the dim light. "Nothing at all." Hearing that, Ash just stayed silent and began looking around the room, doing his best to ignore the question that had just been asked. He noticed it was a small room made entirely out of rough stone and rock. Are we underground? Or maybe inside some kind of mountain? The lighting was decent enough, probably due to a few small mana lamps, or something that looked like mana lamps, placed neatly in each corner of the room. The space itself was plain and simple, without any unnecessary decorations or flashy ornaments. Felt practical, quiet, and a little eerie. "Are you ignoring me now?" Salaretha's voice rang out, calm but sharp, as he watched Ash glance around the room without bothering to reply. "And no, I mean, why would I ignore your question?" Ash replied quickly, trying to sound casual. "The thing is, actually, even I don't really know why you can't read my mind like you say you usually can." Hearing that, a strange and heavy silence settled over the room. For a moment, there was just one human and two unicorns, staring at each other in quiet observation. "Ha ha, ha ha." Ash suddenly let out a soft laugh. But then he stopped. Wait, did I just laugh? He felt confused, a little surprised at himself for showing emotions, but knowing there was a literal monster sitting across from him, he made sure not to show anything unusual in his expression or behavior. "Looking at you now, you actually look more like a normal human than before," Salareth said calmly. "And well, everyone has their own secrets. I won't dig deeper." Looks like he figured out I was lying. Does he have some kind of lie detector or what? Then again, if he can read minds, a lie detector probably isn't even worth mentioning in comparison. "Thank you for sparing me, sir," Ash said with forced politeness. "I honestly didn't know you were here. If I had known, I would have taken a different path altogether. I won't bother you again," he added as he slowly stood up. He noticed he was still wearing the same clothes as before, except for his missing mask. That gave him some relief. It meant not much time had passed. "Please just tell me the way out. I'll leave quietly and I won't tell a single soul about anything I saw here." Salareth tilted his head slightly, looking at Ash with those swirling, rainbow-colored eyes. "Who said you're allowed to leave?" Ash's entire body went still. What the hell did he just say? What does that mean? Ash asked hesitantly, his voice shaky and uncertain. "I checked your entire body," Salareth said calmly, "but I still can't find the source of your undying power, and you might not know this, but my child is currently in a growth phase." As soon as Ash heard the first part of that sentence, he instinctively knew that whatever came next would probably be a nightmare. "Even though I couldn't find anything obvious in your body, when I killed you repeatedly earlier, I did catch a faint scent. One that's nearly impossible to detect. It was the smell of life force. Extremely subtle, but definitely there. I don't know how you're hiding it, but I'm sure that's what's helping you recover and regenerate." Damn. What kind of nose does this guy have? Is he a damn dog? No, wait, his kid was basically like a puppy, right? No wonder he's got that freakish sense of smell. Ash felt the urge to start cursing out loud right then and there, but Salareth wasn't done yet. "So," he continued, "while you were asleep, I tried cutting your body open again, and without fail you healed. Then I tasted your blood, and do you know what it felt like? He paused, his rainbow-colored eyes glowing with intrigue. Your blood. It's like a stream of holy water. Isn't it fascinating? Salareth said with a glimmer of curiosity in his tone. A human whose blood resembles holy water of elves. Of course, it's diluted with your mortal blood, but still for us beasts, it's practically a panacea. Ignoring his words about his blood being panacea, Ash asked in a low, careful voice, as if trying to confirm something unthinkable. Does that mean you cut me down while I was unconscious? Yes, Salareth replied, without a hint of hesitation. With what? Ash narrowed his eyes. With what? What do you mean? I mean, what did you use to cut me? Oh, of course, with a knife. Do you even know how to use one? No. So, you're telling me you cut me with a knife, even though you didn't know how to use it properly? Well, does it matter? Even if you're cut, don't you heal anyway? The room fell into another uncomfortable silence, heavy and tense. This damn bastard. He cut me open like I was some kind of lab rat. If I ever get strong enough, I swear I'll slice him into tiny pieces myself. But first, I need to get out of here. Just tell me where the exit is. I'll leave, Ash said firmly, his expression now hardened and serious. But Salareth merely shook his head. Didn't I already tell you? My child is in his growth phase. You might not know this, but I was planning to go out and search for herbs across the continent to help his development. And then you showed up. Your blood. It's exactly what I need. Just feed my child your blood daily. When he's fully grown, I'll let you go. Ash stared at him in disbelief. So what you're saying is, you want me to become your kid's food? Not you, your blood. Though, if necessary, your flesh would work just as well. Salareth replied with a cheerful smile. This goddamn lunatic. Ash took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm, his hands clenched tight. And how long will it take for him to grow up? About 5 years, Salareth said thoughtfully. Though, if he consumes your blood regularly, he might mature even faster. 5 whole years. A cold glint passed through Ash's eyes as he growled. I don't have time for this nonsense. Your kid is alive and fine, but there's someone out there. Someone dying. Waiting for me right now. I can't waste even a day here. Salareth's eyes narrowed slightly. A strange light flickered in them as he replied. I know you're telling the truth, but I can't just let you go like this. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for my child. Hearing that, Ash went quiet. He knew no amount of pleading or logic would work on someone like this. He wasn't Naruto. He couldn't just bust out a talk no jutsu and magically fix everything with a speech. After a few moments of thought, Ash looked up and asked seriously, Do you know healing? Of course I do, Salareth replied casually, raising an eyebrow as if wondering why that even mattered. Ash's eyes narrowed slightly. Can you remove the entanglement of life force that's been corrupted with demonic energy? The moment those words left his mouth, a sharp chill pierced through the room. Salareth's expression darkened as an invisible wave of pressure spread from his body. His eyes, once calm, now gleamed with a dangerous light. The room itself began to tremble ever so slightly, as if the space around them had become unstable. Ash felt his entire body freeze under the crushing weight of it, as if something ancient and angry had been awakened. What did you just say? Salareth asked, his voice slow, low, and filled with a terrifying stillness. Before the pressure could explode and cause actual destruction, the door to the room suddenly swung open with a loud thud, followed by an irritated voice that echoed through the walls. If something breaks in there, you're sleeping outside for a month. The tension in the room vanished instantly, as if someone had cut a thread holding it all together. A woman stepped into the room, young, perhaps in her mid-20s, with flowing white hair that shimmered in the light, sharp violet eyes that seemed to miss nothing, and a small horn on her forehead that glowed faintly with rainbow hue. Despite her beauty, there was a certain sharpness in her gaze, like someone used to handling dangerous situations with authority. I'm sorry, Salareth quickly apologized, his voice quiet and respectful, though his eyes remained locked onto Ash, still carrying a chilling glare beneath the surface. I don't care. Just give me my child, the woman said flatly, walking forward with a sense of purpose and no hesitation. Salareth obeyed without complaint, gently lifting the baby unicorn and handing it over to her. Before she turned to leave, she looked at Ash. Just a brief glance, then at Salareth, and finally spoke in a calm but firm voice. You'd better listen to his story. Don't jump to conclusions too quickly. Not everything is as it seems. And with those words, she walked out, closing the door behind her with a quiet thud that echoed through the silence she left behind. The room fell into stillness once again. Chapter 110, True Runic Magic. Sai, tell me, why did you ask that question? Salareth asked, his tone unusually calm, yet tinged with curiosity and a trace of sorrow. Hearing that, Ash slowly began to speak. He recounted everything. How Alicia had been gravely injured, how he had left the academy to search for a way to save her, and how the demons had attacked them. His voice held no hesitation, only the weight of a boy carrying more than he should. Once he finished, Salareth looked at him for a moment before asking, Then why are you here? Shouldn't you be somewhere within the territory of the elves? To that, Ash replied calmly, There was something I wanted to do here first before heading there. Although Ash still wasn't revealing his true intentions, Salareth didn't question him further. What Ash had shared was filled with truth, and that was enough for now.
All right. Fine solaret mattered.
As for your earlier question about curing life force which entangled with demonic energy, I'm afraid I can't heal something like that. He leaned back slightly, his gaze turning distant, as though old memories were surfacing. You remember what you told me earlier about losing someone precious? That wasn't a lie. Those demons you spoke of, they came in my home once too. It was during a time when I wasn't home. Not even my wife was around. That day, only my first daughter was there alone. He paused, his voice tightening, the grief behind his words slowly bleeding through. They didn't just come to cause chaos. They came specifically to hunt her. And they weren't alone. Some of them were humans. By the time I returned, the battle was already over. Sensing me, they'd fled, but not before corrupting her with demonic energy. I did everything I could. I tried every healing method known to me. Nothing worked. I even journeyed to the elves, begging them for help. But those arrogant bastards dismissed me. They said the caretaker of the World Tree was too young and inexperienced to handle a case that severe. His eyes darkened. In the end, she died. He clenched his fists, the sorrow in his voice giving way to restrained fury. I was on the edge, ready to destroy everything. But then, in the middle of that storm, my wife told me she was carrying our second child. A long breath escaped his lips, as if he were trying to release the weight of the past. That one piece of hope pulled me back. I took her away from it all. We came here to this distant continent, far away from betrayal and bloodshed, hoping to begin anew. Hearing his story, Ash remained silent. He didn't speak, not because he lacked words, but because he understood that kind of pain all too well, the kind of pain that comes from losing someone you love deeply, someone you could never replace. After a short pause, he looked up and asked gently, So, those humans, do you have any idea who they were? Anything that might give a clue? Salareth shook his head with a tired expression. I don't. I couldn't recognize them, and I've never seen them before. But there's one thing I clearly remember. They carried an energy, something vile and unnatural. It was twisted, just like the demons, something that didn't belong in this world. Were those people demonic humans? Ash couldn't help but consider the possibility. Demonic humans were those who willingly allowed demonic energy to enter their bodies. The reason was rather simple, though grim. Demons usually chose humans who were already strong but had limited potential to grow further. By accepting demonic energy, those humans could gain a massive boost in strength and potential. But, in exchange, they would pay with their souls. The demonic energy would bind them, making them slaves to the demon that marked them. There's definitely a chance those attackers were demonic humans. But even then, why go after his daughter specifically? What made her a target? Do you know why they attacked your daughter? Ash asked, trying to keep his voice calm and respectful. Salareth frowned slightly, then shook his head. I really don't. I've thought about it for years, but I never found a clear answer. Was there anything unusual about her? Something rare or unique? Ash asked again, trying to piece the puzzle together. Salareth's eyes softened with pain, his voice lowering. My daughter was a genius. She was born with both of my eyes and the 3 horns inherited from her mother. Even in all the bloodline memories passed down to me, memories that span generations, there was nothing recorded about a child like her. She was the first of her kind. I believed she would grow into the strongest queen in our history. But in the end, she was taken before that future could happen. His expression dimmed, a deep sadness crossing his face. Wait, both the traits of the king and the queen? That's not normal. That's something extraordinary. A child who inherited the peak of both bloodlines? That's more than rare, that's dangerous, at least to the demons. Did the demons eliminate her to stop her from becoming a future threat? Did they fear the power she might grow into? If so, then maybe the demons somehow know who can become a hindrance to their plans. Maybe they have a way to see it before it happens. Is that why they targeted Ray in the novel? To remove him before he could stand in their way? But then, what about me? Up until now, they haven't made any move against me. Maybe they truly didn't know I existed. But now that Zarek has escaped, maybe that's changed. Then someone on the demon side must be capable of divination. Someone who can peer into fate, who can see glimpses of the future and find those destined to oppose them. The more Ash thought about it, the more the scattered pieces in his mind aligned into a terrifying picture. It explained why Ray had been targeted in the novel so precisely, why he himself had remained out of their radar until now, and why the unicorn girl, a once-in-a-generation miracle, had been hunted down before she could become what she was meant to be. I understand, Ash said quietly. He had connected the dots, but he chose not to share his theory aloud. Revealing too much might only raise suspicion about how he knew so much regarding the demons, especially things not even Salareth could guess. Salareth sighed, his voice growing distant. Let's leave that aside for now. I wish I could help you heal the one you care about, but I truly cannot. As for how the elves might react to your request, I really can't say. Their decisions can be difficult to predict. Ash remained silent at that, his expression unreadable, but his mind was clearly lost in deep thought. Then, as if a sudden spark ignited in his mind, he looked up and asked with a curious intensity, "Do you know magic?" Salareth looked at him with a hint of confusion, clearly surprised by the sudden shift in topic, but still answered honestly, "Yes, I do." Ash leaned in slightly, his eyes lighting up with quiet eagerness. "Can you show me?" Salareth still didn't quite understand why Ash was suddenly asking about magic, but he could tell that the boy wasn't someone who meant harm. And even if Ash had some hidden motive, it was clear he didn't possess enough power to be a threat. More importantly, he carried the same kind of pain in his voice, the same weight that came from surviving an encounter with demons. So, trusting his instincts, Salareth agreed. He slowly extended his hands in front of him, fingers relaxed, and calmly whispered, "Ignite." At that moment, the air shifted. A series of glowing, intricate symbols bloomed into existence, hovering gently in the space between his palms. They shimmered like ancient glyphs, rotating and intertwining as if pulled by unseen threads. And then, without warning, a small flame erupted into life in Salareth's hands. It wasn't just any fire. It was a delicate rainbow-colored flame, pulsing with a soft radiance, and powered by pure ether. Ash stared, awestruck, barely able to contain the gasp that surged in his chest. "This is it. This is exactly what I've been searching for. I knew it. This is the real thing. This is the true form of runic magic." His heart beat faster with excitement. Unable to contain the rush of emotion, he quickly asked, What kind of magic is this? Does it have a name? Solareth looked at the rainbow flame in his hands, then slowly shook his head. This magic. I learned it through the memories passed down in my bloodline. It didn't come with a name. I don't know who created it or where it originally came from. That part of the memory it's missing. Just blank. Ash's thoughts spiraled. Missing memories? Then maybe my theory is right. Maybe there really was an ancient civilization, one that discovered and developed runic magic, spreading it across the world before vanishing. If that's the case, could the missing memories be a result of their destruction? Some kind of erasure? He didn't have enough evidence to say for sure, but he knew he was getting closer to the truth. Looking up at Solareth with a serious expression that quickly turned into an awkward smile as he asked, "Can you teach me this magic? In exchange, I'll become baby food for your kid like you said." Solareth raised an eyebrow at Ash's words, unsure if the boy had actually thought through what he just said or if he had finally lost it. "You do understand what you just offered, right?" Solareth asked, his voice calm but definitely amused. "My son is teething, and he bites with love." Ash stood there brimming with confidence, completely unfazed. "How bad could it be? I've died once when my head was blown off and survived countless injuries. A magical baby can't possibly be worse than that." Solareth's lips curled into a knowing smile as he replied, "Well, it's a bit late for introductions, but I suppose I should tell you. I am Solareth, the King of Unicorns." He paused, eyes glinting with a mysterious light before adding with a strange, almost mischievous smile. "And if you're confident enough to become my son's next meal, well, that's certainly impressive." Chapter 111. Destroy Magic Circle. "Go ahead and eat," Solareth said to Eric, his son. Ash looked at the father-son duo, who were calmly talking to each other. "Eat?" Eric asked, tilting his head with innocent curiosity. "Yes, eat," Solareth replied, smiling and nodding his head gently. "Food?" Eric asked again. This time, his eyes drifted to the blood flowing directly from Ash's hand into a small basket below, collecting steadily. His eyes sparkled. "Wait, are those eyes looking at my palm?" Ash thought, a chill running through him. A while ago, Ash had made a deal with Solareth. In exchange for staying here for a month and feeding his son, Solareth had agreed to personally teach Ash the foundation of runic magic. After the month ended, Ash would be allowed to leave and enter the ruin he was originally planning to explore. Solareth agreed, although he added that Ash would have to come back again in the future to feed his son. Surprisingly, Ash agreed. Although the deal sounded generous and almost ridiculous, Ash could tell it wasn't some kind of trap. It felt more like Solareth was offering him this kindness out of genuine goodwill. Even Ash didn't know why the Unicorn King was acting so nicely towards him. Maybe it was because Solareth could relate to Ash, as someone whose daughter has died because he was not able to cure her. Maybe he wants Ash to succeed. Or maybe he liked Ash's determination, choosing to leave alone at such a small age, looking for a cure for his loved one. Ash didn't know the exact reason why Solareth agreed so easily to teach him magic. After all, didn't he kill him because he was an anomaly who disturbed the fate? Ash didn't know the answer. But what he did know was that this was a golden opportunity. A one-time chance to learn real runic magic, and he wasn't going to waste it. Ash knew if he could get the rune from the ruin and also rank up, then with his skill creation power and the rune, fighting would no longer be a major issue. He could just escape if needed. Ash pushed those thoughts aside for now as his focus returned to the small glutton approaching him, his mouth slightly open and drooling. Eric's little steps were slow but determined, his fluffy white mane swaying with each movement. Ash's palm still had a small dagger stuck in it. He had intentionally left it there because if he removed it, the wound would quickly heal and the blood would stop flowing into the basket. "Come on, hurry up and eat," Ash urged him to finish fast. The tiny unicorn with his wide, glittering eyes looked up at him again and asked in an innocent tone, "Eat?" Ash nodded with a weary expression. "Yes, eat. That's what I've been telling you." A short distance away, Solareth and Lumiel stood side by side, silently watching their son's actions with pride in their eyes. Both of them were hoping he would grow stronger through this strange but important process. The moment Ash's words faded, Eric suddenly opened his mouth like a ravenous beast and, with no hesitation, chomped down on Ash's entire palm, dagger and all. Gulp! It all happened too fast. Ash didn't even have time to blink or react. 1 second he was telling the kid to eat, and the next second, his hand was halfway inside the tiny unicorn's mouth, the dagger completely gone. He looked down at the half-healed stump of his palm, then at Eric, who was chewing joyfully like someone enjoying their favorite snack. Oh my life! I should have said drink, not eat. Why did I say eat? What kind of idiot tells a magical beast child to eat a bleeding hand like it's a sandwich? I can't even get angry. I don't know how that bastard will react. Ash silently clenched his teeth, pushing down the mix of pain, frustration, and disbelief, and simply prayed in his heart. Let the month pass by quickly. After the said breakfast, when Ash asked Solareth to teach him magic, the Unicorn King simply replied that it would be better to start the next day instead. Ash was clearly disappointed by the delay, but he didn't argue. Left with nothing else to do, he spent the rest of his time swinging his sword in solitude, letting the steady rhythm of training keep his thoughts at bay. He also fed the baby unicorn 2 more times that day. But this time, instead of directly showing his hand like before, he brought out a small basket filled with fresh blood and placed it in front of the creature. This time, he didn't leave room for confusion. He clearly instructed, "Drink." Later, after sharing a rather normal dinner with the king and queen, Ash retired to his room and went to sleep. The food that evening had been simple, just ordinary meat, but it was rich with nutrients and infused with natural mana, which was surprisingly beneficial for his body. It left him feeling both nourished and recharged. The next day, Ash woke up early as usual. After preparing another basket filled with fresh blood for the unicorn child, he stepped outside, where Solareth was already waiting for him. Today was the start of his first magic training session. As he walked out into the open, Ash finally realized something he hadn't thought about properly until now. So this place really is inside a mountain. Looking around, he noticed the clouds drifting close by, hanging at eye level like they were part of the land itself. It was clear to him now they were high above the ground, far from any normal landscape. The surroundings shimmered faintly, coated in a radiant, rainbow-like energy that danced gently through the air. Solareth, seeing Ash's quiet awe, commented in a calm voice, "This entire mountain is covered in illusion magic. No one on the outside can see it. Well, except for those who are on the same level as me." He spoke the last part with a slightly colder tone, one that carried a quiet but chilling edge. Ash immediately caught the subtle shift and chose not to respond. He simply gave a silent nod, keeping his thoughts to himself. They soon arrived at a wide, open space that looked like someone had forcefully carved it out to resemble a garden. Despite its artificial origins, the place was beautiful. The sky above was a clear shade of azure, and the sunlight fell gently upon the ground, casting a warm glow across the area. The space was surrounded by soft rainbow light, while vibrant flowers and the fresh scent of nature danced in the wind. Everything at that moment felt peaceful, pure, and untouched. Walking to the center of the field, Solareth turned to face Ash and asked in a serious tone, "Are you absolutely sure that you want to learn this kind of magic?" Ash didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'm sure," he replied with confidence. Solareth looked at him again, this time with a bit more curiosity. "But are you even capable of learning it? From what I know, humans usually have only one class. And earlier, I saw you practicing with a sword, which clearly isn't related to magic." Ash frowned slightly, already growing impatient. "It's fine. Just teach me the magic," he said without backing down. All right, Solareth replied, slightly amused at Ash's stubborn attitude. "Let's start with the basics, then." He raised his hand slightly, motioning as he explained, "The foundation of our magic, beast magic, is very different from what humans use. While humans rely on constructing magic circles to cast spells, we beasts don't rely on any external structure or formation. Instead of using magic circle as a catalyst, we use our body as a catalyst, which is more comfortable and beneficial for us. From what I know, there's another branch of human magic too, the one they call runic magic. Salareth paused briefly, frowning as he recalled. From what I've learned, runic magic is basically a poor imitation of our beast magic, and perhaps also of elven magic. Humans say it originated from the study of ancient runes, but in all honesty, there's no actual mention of runes in any of our ancestral memories. So I can't confirm if that's true or not. He crossed his arms and continued in a thoughtful tone. But it might be possible. After all, humans have been researching magic by digging up ruins and deciphering fragments. Still, their version of runic magic is incomplete. After all, they're trying to recreate something they barely understand. And because of that, their version has many flaws and strict limitations. He looked at Ash, eyes narrowing slightly. Can you guess what the biggest limitation is? Ash, recalling his research, replied confidently, humans can't cast that type of magic directly. They need arrays, inscriptions, or artifacts to channel it. Their bodies can't manifest it naturally like beasts can. Salareth gave a small nod. That's part of it. But there's an even deeper reason, one that's often overlooked. He stepped forward and pointed to Ash's chest. It's their magic circle, the one all humans form as the foundation of their magic. Salareth's tone was firmer now, the weight of his words sinking into the air. That magic circle creates a kind of interference that prevents the raw flow of our magic from manifesting properly. That's why even though humans try to copy our runic magic, they can't truly replicate it. Their own foundation clashes with the principles of our magic. He exhaled slowly, his gaze steady. And here's the thing, humans already know this. They're aware of the issue, but still, they refuse to completely abandon their system. It's not just stubbornness, though. Runic magic, as they know it, is incomplete. What they've reconstructed from old texts is only a fragment of the full system. That's why their attempts often end in failure or limitation. He turned away slightly, voice softening. Beasts, on the other hand, inherit magic through our bloodlines. It's passed down to us by blood itself. The same goes for dragons. That's why our magic feels alive and seamless. We don't need external tools to guide it. It flows through us naturally. He looked Ash directly in the eyes now, his voice steady but serious. So, if you want to learn this kind of magic, you'll need to destroy your own magic circle first. Hearing that, Ash fell silent. He hesitated because he knew what that meant. He understood the danger behind those words. Destroying a magic circle wasn't something done lightly. It could possibly end his ability to use magic entirely. It was a step that couldn't be undone. Ash thought about Alicia. While he was here, preparing to learn a new form of magic, she was out there, fighting for her life. Only he knew the urgency clawing at his chest because of that. But even then, he was here focusing on the foundation of runic magic. Because as Salareth had explained, even the elves followed the runic magic system. That meant if Ash truly wanted to learn it, he had to begin with the basics. He wasn't wasting time. Every step he took was after deep, deliberate thought. He didn't intend to throw away a single moment. Salareth watched him closely, then added in a calm but warning tone. You should think about it very carefully. I can teach you the core principles, yes. But after that, you'll have to figure out most of it on your own. I can't teach you our ancestral magic after all. That knowledge is something that runs in our king's bloodline, something only we can truly inherit. What I can give you is only the foundation. The rest, you'll have to research, experiment with, and build up from scratch, step by step. There's also the chance that you might not be able to learn it at all, no matter how hard you try. His eyes bore into Ash's, unwavering and sharp. This path is not easy, but it is powerful. If you can truly walk it, you can become the first human to walk a new magical path. First human? I don't think so. There were many who knew it in the past. So I believe I can do it, especially since I have the real runes with me. I am ready. So, do I have to destroy my magic circle first? Hearing that, Salareth sighed, but didn't say anything at first. Then he replied, yes, you have to destroy it, although destroying it may lead to various problems. Like you might get seriously injured, your mana pathways could become twisted, and in the worst case, you may even die. But, Solareth added with meaning in his voice, I don't think you'll face any of those problems. He said that last part with intention, already aware of the regeneration and revival abilities Ashe possessed. And maybe, runic magic really is suitable for you. After all, I don't think you're human. Which human can regenerate like that and come back after death? Solareth thought silently, but didn't say any of it out loud. Chapter 112, Symbols Va Will. As Ashe sat down in a lotus position and began to meditate, his breathing slowed, and his senses drew inward. He focused on the center of his chest, where his magic circle resided. With his inner vision, the intricate formation soon came into view, softly glowing like a familiar old friend. He stared at it quietly for a few moments. It was strange. Just a few months ago, he had formed this circle with such excitement, believing it to be the start of his magical journey. And now, here he was about to destroy it. A strange wave of nostalgia washed over him, as if he were saying goodbye to a piece of himself. But he pushed those feelings aside. This was not the time for sentiment. Gritting his teeth, Ashe willed the mana within the circle to go berserk, to twist and turn and force the structure to collapse under pressure. The magic circle resisted. As expected, it clung to its existence, unwilling to shatter so easily. It was like a battle of wills, a tug-of-war between him and the magic system that had become a part of him. But Ashe didn't back down. His resolve surged, and with unwavering determination, he forced his will to dominate. And then, a sharp crack echoed through his consciousness. The circle shattered. It fractured into countless shimmering pieces before dissolving completely. Ashe felt a brief pulse of pain, but also an odd sense of liberation. He was lucky. He had only formed his first circle. If he had advanced further, the resistance would have been far more intense, and the destruction might have caused even greater damage. Still, the moment the circle broke, the mana contained within it was unleashed. Wild and untamed, it surged through his body like a storm, raging without direction. It targeted his meridians, threatening to rupture them, and even reached toward his heart, trying to burn everything from within. But then, just as the chaotic energy reached its peak, a mechanical voice echoed in his mind, calm and emotionless. Protective override activated. The effect was instantaneous. The rampaging mana slowed as if soothed by some invisible force. Its fury melted away, and it gently redirected itself inward. Instead of causing harm, the energy flowed directly into Ashe's core and was absorbed smoothly, disappearing into the depths like rainwater into thirsty earth. The mana now rested quietly within his core, dormant, waiting patiently for his call. I totally forgot about this, Ashe thought, watching as the protective override activated, sparing him hassle and saving precious time. You really are strange one. There's no reaction at all after your mana circle was destroyed, Solareth said, his voice carrying a hint of shock. Can he sense it? Ashe wondered nervously as Solareth asked, Can you sense what's happening inside my body? Of course I can. At my level, anyone can sense that. Ashe hesitated for a moment before asking, What is your level then? Slightly amused, Solareth replied, Around the power of saints, according to your ranking system. He is that powerful. I guessed he'd be at that level, but can he really sense inside me? Isn't it hidden by the rune of concealment? Can he sense my core too? And if he can sense all that, why did he ask if I can do magic? Then why did you ask if I can do magic if you can sense what's inside me? Ashe pressed. Solareth's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Well, didn't you remember I said you have something that hides everything from my vision? I thought you allowed me to look so I was able to see. Is it not even in your control? Does that mean the rune of concealment subconsciously knows what I want and hides or reveals things based on that? Ashe felt like he was close to unraveling another mystery, but he quickly responded, Nah, just testing something. Now tell me what to do. I've destroyed my magic circle. Salareth fell silent. He stared at Ash sitting below him, his rainbow-colored eyes glowing softly. Ash was covered from head to toe in a web of golden threads, not a single inch of his body visible beneath the shimmering strands. He was connected to so many destinies that it was almost impossible to comprehend. It's only growing stronger and more tangled, Salareth thought, watching the increasing number of threads. One of the threads connected directly to him, shining a little brighter than the rest. Two others linked to members of his own family. But among them, one thread stood out, bright red, thick, and stretching far into the void. Is that his soul partner? Maybe she's the one he talked about. Salareth's thoughts grew heavier. I don't know if what I'm doing is right, but I can feel fate getting more tangled as time goes on. Is it really okay to keep the fate disruptor alive? I killed him before, but he revived. He can't be killed, so what's the point? I don't know. Fate should have thought twice before taking my daughter from me. At first, I thought he was nothing but a pest, but after seeing how he revived, maybe now I can give fate a gift worth remembering. Then Salareth placed his finger gently on Ash's forehead, attempting to transmit information directly into his mind, but immediately encountered a strong resistance. What the hell are you? I can't even send information to you like this, Salareth said, looking at Ash with a mix of confusion and curiosity. Ash smiled faintly, just enough to show a hint of amusement, and signaled him to try again. Quietly, Ash willed his mind to allow only the incoming information while blocking everything else that might interfere. He wasn't sure if this method would work, but he gave it a try. Fortunately, it did. Soon, Ash's mind became filled with detailed knowledge about the runes, as if a floodgate had opened and the information poured in steadily and clearly. So basically, in runic magic, it's all about manifesting power from words. The stronger the word and the clearer its meaning, the more powerful the magic it produces. There are around 20 symbols that form the foundation of this magic system. Each symbol has its own distinct meaning, but many symbols carry multiple related meanings. For example, one symbol stands for stability, but it also includes ideas like equanimity, tranquility, firmness, solidity, soundness, anchorage, foundation, and many more. All these meanings revolve around a similar core idea, but each shade adds depth and nuance. If you can figure out the right combination of these meanings between different symbols, the magic will manifest accordingly. For instance, if you combine a word like ignite with a symbol like stability, the power will increase and become stronger. The result is a stable fire. Fire that burns with control and steadiness rather than wild chaos. So basically, it works like the magic in many novels, except instead of moving mana around, you use your willpower to command and manifest specific words. Although explaining it is easy, actually doing it is much harder. According to the memories, unicorns and other mythical beasts like dragons can perform this magic naturally through their bloodline. It's written into their blood, and the blood acts like an anchor that holds the power steady. Think of the blood like a cell phone tower that stores all the meanings of the symbols deeply embedded inside it. The signal we receive is the user's willpower sending commands through that tower. Another way to think about it is the internet. You type a query, and it shows results. The blood is like the internet infrastructure, the typing is the command sent by your will, and the search result is the magic you get. This system acts like a middleman, performing magic according to your wishes by interpreting your commands. But eventually, there is a limit. The symbols have countless meanings, some so strange or vast that no one fully understands them. If you can't imagine a meaning, how could it be known to you? So not all meanings were present in the bloodlines of these creatures. According to information, the true symbols are ever-changing. The recorded knowledge only includes what their ancestors were able to comprehend from those symbols and store in their bloodline. Only 4 or 5 symbols were present in the unicorn bloodline. Salareth gave Ash knowledge of one of those symbols. I see. Those ever-changing symbols must be the runes. Maybe their ancestors tried to comprehend the runes when they weren't in a locked state and understood at least a part of their true meanings. They probably managed to store that understanding within their bloodline, passing it down from generation to generation, which eventually became the foundation of runic magic. and the information related to the rune of stability. It's a bit too overwhelming for my head to handle all at once. It honestly feels like a headache every time I activate Omni Thought. Was that the reason why those mythical ancestor beasts decided to store the knowledge directly inside their bloodlines? Because the sheer amount of information was too much for a mind to process normally? But what about me? Do I also need to comprehend these meanings personally? And if so, what will act as my anchor? Will it be my soul? The rune itself? Or maybe something completely different? Ash didn't know the answer, so he rubbed his head, trying to ease the slight throbbing, and asked softly, "What will be my anchor?" To that, Solareth replied in a calm but serious tone, "I don't know. You'll have to figure that out on your own. Didn't I already tell you? You have to think through everything and create everything by yourself. The most I can do is provide information, and even then, I've only shared the knowledge of one of the symbols with you. If you want to learn more, you'll have to pay some kind of price. It can't be given freely." Solareth then turned to leave, but as he walked away, he added with a hint of amusement in his voice, "Now that I've given you your payment, just feed my child 3 times a day for a month. Once that's done, leave. And maybe, just maybe, if you return after that, I'll give you the information of another symbol." Saying that, he walked away into the distance. Ash quietly watched Solareth's back as he left. Even though he didn't receive the knowledge of the remaining 4 symbols, Ash didn't feel disappointed. Why would someone pay to recharge their phone when they themselves own the entire data company? He had the real runes. So why would he bother chasing second-hand interpretations of their meanings? There was even a chance that he wouldn't need to understand their deeper meanings at all. Maybe, once he collected all the runes, he could just manifest the power behind any word through sheer will. He could already see the image in his mind, himself standing tall amidst the battlefield, casting powerful magic with nothing but spoken words like slow and stop, each syllable bending the flow of reality itself, while his sword slashing through enemies with unmatched elegance and strength. A perfect fusion of magic and blade, overwhelming anyone who dared to face him. Just imagining it gave Ash goosebumps, but he quickly calmed himself down. For now, he had to try. He needed to test if he could actually use the runic magic. Chapter 113. First Runic Spell Casting. 1 week later. During this week, other than eating, feeding the unicorn baby, and sleeping, Ash had spent most of his time sitting still in deep meditation. Day after day, night after night, he was focused on trying to perform magic using the knowledge he had received. But, unfortunately for him, no matter how much time he put into it, nothing seemed to work. Right now, under the soft moonlight, he was still sitting with his legs crossed, lost in thought, trying once again to find the answers to his questions. Answers that had kept slipping through his fingers like sand. According to the Academy books, runic magic is supposed to manifest through the use of magic arrays. These arrays act as anchors. They are the foundation that holds the symbols in one place, allowing the magic to take shape. And the mana that flows into the array serves as the will of the caster, the guiding force that brings the magic to life. So, in my case, I already have mana. I even have a clear image of the symbol in my mind thanks to Solareth. But what I don't have is the anchor, something to hold and support the symbol in place so it can manifest. For the past week, Ash had tried again and again, failing just as many times as he tried. Each time, he had focused on the mental image of the stability symbol that Solareth had shown him, hoping that would be enough to activate the magic. But not once had he seen any reaction. He had considered the possibility of using his blood as an anchor, but he quickly realized that it wasn't something he could rely on. Even if it was possible to use blood in that way, he didn't have the knowledge or ability to store such complex information in his bloodline. And even Solareth had admitted he didn't know how to teach that. Well, we beasts can store the information we've comprehended into our bloodlines, allowing it to be passed down to the next generation, Solareth had said, almost like it was a natural instinct for them. But that's not something humans can easily do. So Ash stopped thinking about using his blood. He moved on to the next possible option, his soul. That made the most sense to him, especially since the real runes were hidden within his soul. But here, too, he was blocked. The biggest problem was that he couldn't feel his soul at all. No matter how much he tried, he couldn't sense even the faintest trace of it. And if he couldn't feel his own soul, then there was no way he could try to use it as an anchor. The same issue applied to the runes themselves. They were part of him, sealed within him, but they remained hidden, out of reach. For nearly a whole week, Ash had done nothing but try to feel the presence of his soul, reaching deep within through meditation, hoping for a response. But no matter how hard he focused, the result was always the same: silence, emptiness, and disappointment. Right now, Ash was once again going over everything in his mind, reviewing the basics from the beginning to see if he had missed even the smallest clue. Will, what exactly is will? It's basically my intent, right? My thoughts, my desire, my consciousness trying to connect with the world around me. It's the same way I control my mana. I guide it by focusing my thoughts and intention. So maybe here, too, I just need to focus all my intent, filled with a clear reason and purpose, into one single word. A word that truly represents what I want to create. Just then, as if lightning had struck inside his mind, an idea bloomed with a sense of clarity and hope that he had been desperately searching for. My primordial core, doesn't it already have those symbols carved into it? Even if they are not the ever-changing ones, but still it can act as my anchor, the foundation to hold the spell together. Feeling as if he had finally found the answer to his ongoing problem, Ash's heart filled with excitement. He immediately shifted his focus toward both of his cores, allowing his full attention to pour into them. What he saw were two white cores, glowing faintly in his spiritual sense, each of them filled with purest mana. Engraved across their surface were countless small symbols, layered upon each other in intricate and mysterious patterns. He chose one core first and directed his attention to it. Slowly, carefully, he tried to send his intent toward it. He visualized the phenomenon of a lightning ball, how it would form, how it would gather and shape itself into an orb, and how he wanted it to act. He focused all of that understanding into a single word and muttered, "Spark." He tried to activate it, but nothing happened. He tried it again, but still there was no reaction. Refusing to give up, Ash took a deep breath and calmed himself. This time, he put even more effort into the visualization. He thought carefully about what mana truly was, how it flowed through the body and responded to thoughts, how it moved and shaped itself when infused with purpose. He imagined how lightning was formed, how it would compress and rotate into a small, dense sphere. He even considered the amount of energy required and how destructive it should be. He wrapped all of this information into his intent, and once again focused it toward the core and muttered, "Spark ball." To his surprise, this time something changed. His mana stirred on its own. Without him consciously moving it, his core responded. The mana flowed out naturally, moving from his core toward his hand. Ash lifted his hand slowly, his eyes opening in anticipation. What he saw next made him freeze in awe. Tiny symbols, glowing like fireflies in the night, began to appear above his palm. They were all linked together by a thin, flowing string of white mana, moving in harmony like a living spell. Golden symbols connected by that glowing thread spun gently in a circle, creating a pattern that looked both beautiful and mysterious. And then, in an instant, a small ball of lightning formed at the center. Ash could immediately feel the difference. The lightning orb was far more powerful and concentrated than any he had produced before. It was not as explosive as the lightning he had created during his core overload state, but compared to his usual state, this one was undeniably more refined and more destructive. As he looked at the glowing lightning ball hovering above his hand, surrounded by glowing golden symbols, a deep and overwhelming joy rushed through his veins. His blood felt like it was dancing, his body trembling from the sheer emotion of it all. A smile appeared on his usually expressionless face. For a moment, he wanted to shout with joy and scream at the top of his lungs. He wanted to yell, "Yes, baby!" and announce to the entire world that he had finally done it. But he stopped himself just in time. This was not the place for celebration. It was neither the right time nor the right moment. And even if he wanted to laugh, he couldn't do it properly. If he started running around with a small smile on his face and a cold glint in his eyes while laughing and dancing for no reason, Solareth might actually think he had gone insane and kick him out without a second thought. So, Ash held back his excitement and instead began experimenting more with the process, refining it step by step. And just like that, 2 more weeks passed. Within those 2 weeks, Ash had learned a lot about his own version of runic magic. There were clear advantages, but also a few limitations he couldn't ignore. As Ash had originally expected, he didn't need to fully comprehend the deep meanings behind the runic symbols. His primordial core, acting as an intermediary, could naturally pull out the meaning and function of any symbol etched into it, and then use that to perform the spell. This made things a lot easier for him. For example, when he first created the spark ball, he had to visualize everything very clearly. The way lightning formed, how it shaped into a sphere, how much mana it needed, and how destructive it should be. That process took focus, time, and effort. But the good part? He only had to do that once. After that, as long as he said the word spark ball with the intent to cast it, the spell would form automatically in his hand. No need for deep focus again. But he also realized something important. His words and intent needed to match exactly. If he casually said spark ball, while wanting to cast multiple lightning balls, nothing would happen. The magic wouldn't understand him unless he was crystal clear. He had to say multiple spark ball while thinking about creating more than one, and only then would the spell respond and create what he wanted. When it came to traditional magic circles, though, the process was a bit different. He didn't need to force his intent into every detail. As long as he studied a spell's magic circle properly and synchronized it with the one engraved in his heart, that was enough. The magic would then function smoothly, as if it were already a part of him. Now all he needed was time. With enough effort, he could create entirely new spells, shape their concept into words, and once that word was spoken with intent, the magic would take form. It was like programming magic using language and thought. He wouldn't need to memorize detailed spell formations anymore. He wouldn't need to carve new magic circles into his heart to cast high-level spell. All he needed was time, knowledge, and imagination. Still, the system wasn't perfect. There were a few flaws he couldn't ignore. One big drawback was the amount of study it required. To create even a simple spell, he had to deeply understand how it worked in reality. For instance, how lightning was shaped, how it formed in the atmosphere, and what kind of mana flow it required. This wasn't something he could half-learn or rush through. It required time, observation, and real comprehension. Only then could he take that understanding, infuse it into words, and cast the spell with intent that matched the meaning behind those words. And there was another limitation, one he discovered the hard way. He couldn't use spells based on elements he didn't have an affinity for. He had tried to cast a fire spell once by saying ignite, mimicking the same process Solareth had used for igniting fire. But nothing happened. No matter how precise his intent was or how clear the word, if the element wasn't aligned with his natural affinity, the spell simply wouldn't respond. That meant the scope of his spells was limited. He could only shape and command the elements that resonated with his affinity. Still, despite those limits, the potential was massive. But if he managed to do that, if he truly learned how magic functioned and shaped that into clear commands, then everything would fall into place like a perfectly tuned machine. And magic, for him, would become as natural as breathing. In that case, he would never again need to memorize a complicated magic circle to cast a spell. Not that he had any problem with memorizing one, but still. However, there was one more limitation, and it was a serious one. His primordial core could only hold one fixed runic symbol. That symbol acted as the anchor for his magic system. But the runes in his soul were different. They were always shifting, constantly changing form. /N. Don't ask how he knows the runes in his soul keep changing. He's a novel reader. He knows. This meant that, while his current system was powerful, it wasn't using the full potential of real runic magic. As long as he relied on the fixed symbol in his core, he might be limiting himself. If he could somehow tap into the ever-changing runes within his soul instead, his magic would reach a whole new level. What a pain. Strong, no doubt. But if I could somehow perceive my own soul, just once, if I could use the real runes floating there instead of the ones on my core, then I can't even begin to imagine the kind of magic I could perform. Chapter 114. The Bond Beyond Blood. What a pain. It's powerful, there's no doubt about that. But if I could somehow perceive my own soul, even just once, if I could directly use the real runes floating there instead of the ones stored in my core, then honestly, I can't even begin to imagine what kind of magic I might be capable of. Right now, Ash was lying on the grass as the late evening settled in. The sun had already dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky and the distant mountains in a warm, golden-orange hue. A gentle breeze swept across the landscape, rustling softly through his hair as he stared up at the open sky above him, his thoughts drifting far beyond the clouds. But how am I even supposed to perceive my soul? That's the big. Just then, as that very thought crossed his mind, something small suddenly appeared above him. A small, dog-sized unicorn appeared just above his head, its fur soft and pristine, and its oversized, glimmering rainbow eyes filled with pure, innocent curiosity as it stared down at Ash. Drool slowly dripped from the side of its mouth, clearly excited. "Is it your eating time again?" Ash asked with a raised brow, looking up at the ever-enthusiastic Eric. He sat up from the ground and casually willed his sword to manifest into the form of a small knife. Without hesitation, he made a clean, deep cut across his palm. Strangely, the wound didn't heal this time. He brought his bleeding hand closer to Eric, who immediately leaned in and began drinking the blood directly from his palm, his little tail flicking with excitement. Watching him drink with such eager energy, Ash couldn't help but think to himself, he's grown up a little. At least now he doesn't bite anymore. In the past 3 weeks, not only had Ash's understanding and usage of runic magic grown significantly, but his relationship with Eric, Solareth, and Solareth's wife had also become much stronger. At the beginning, Eric couldn't understand much beyond basic emotions or vague instincts. But now, for some reason, he had slowly begun to understand Ash's words, at least to a certain degree. It wasn't perfect communication, but it was progress, and that mattered. Ash's willpower had also improved immensely during this time. The constant process of imagining new magical concepts, translating those ideas into precise words, and carefully inscribing them onto his core had trained his mind relentlessly. There were failures along the way, yes, but most of his efforts ended in success, and each small success helped him grow stronger inside. Through this process, he had created spells he never had before, unique and personal ones, and even improved many existing ones into better, more efficient versions. He remembered asking Solareth once about how to increase willpower. According to him, there was no known method to directly raise it. Willpower was something that naturally increased only when someone faced challenges and overcame them. Couldn't be forced. It had to be earned through experience and effort. There might be some ancient technique or hidden method somewhere in the vastness of the universe to raise one's mental strength. But Ash had never read anything about it, and the novel he remembered never mentioned anything like that either. Still, thanks to his steadily growing willpower, Ash had recently discovered that he could now influence the passive effects of the runes by consciously expending his mental energy. Control might be too big of a word here, he thought to himself, watching his slowly bleeding hand. Let's just say, by using my will, I can stop the healing of my skin, even though the rune of life should have closed this wound by now. Although not exact control, but some progress, right? But I don't know how this will affect my rank up. Ash let the thought hang in his mind. Normally, to rise from novice to apprentice rank, he would need to first max out all of his stats and then form his second magic circle. That was the standard process. But now, in his case, he didn't even have a magic circle. Not anymore. So how was he supposed to rank up now? Would there be some alternate condition he had to meet? Or would there be no condition at all? I really don't know. He also noticed something strange. Both his upper and lower cores were capable of performing runic magic. It was probably because his core was no ordinary one, but a primordial core. If it weren't, then wouldn't even a normal warrior, someone without any upper core and magical talent, be able to use magic just like that? But alas, the conditions required to form a primordial core were far too harsh. Even Ray, the main character of the novel, didn't possess it. And, As we already knew, both of Ash's cores existed in a symbiotic relationship. So if one of the cores happened to exhaust all of its mana, the other would automatically begin transferring mana to refill the emptied core. Still, despite the uncertainty, there was one thing he could be thankful for. Thanks to staying here for the past few weeks and eating properly, his stats had steadily gone up. The food served in the academy had always been high quality, crafted to support magical development and physical health. But the meals prepared by the unicorn couple were on an entirely different level, pure, rich in mana, and made with ingredients beyond what even nobles could usually afford. As he continued training and eating here day by day, his body naturally grew stronger, and his stats kept increasing. Attributes: Strength, 181. Agility, 181. Vitality, 181. Intelligence, 181. Stamina, 181. Charm, 181.
Mana 181.
An increase of 10 stat points in just 3 weeks. Even though that's fast by most standards, it still feels slow. And if I go into the ruin, I have no idea what lies inside. I don't know what Mirik and Zarek found in there either. Although he held onto a sliver of hope, perhaps he would discover something inside the ruin that could help accelerate his stat growth. He wasn't all that optimistic. After all, without knowing what those two had encountered or obtained, how could he even begin to expect similar results? So, instead of relying solely on hope, he had to make a backup plan. Just then, he noticed Eric had stopped eating. The baby unicorn quietly walked over to him, and without a sound, laid his head gently in Ash's lap before falling into a peaceful sleep. Ash stopped resisting the natural healing effects flowing through him, and his wounds began to close up gradually. He looked down and placed a careful hand on Eric's head, softly patting him with a kind of gentleness he rarely showed. Soft. The thought passed through his mind as his eyes subtly softened, the usual frost within them momentarily melting. And with that shift came another thought, drifting in from the past maybe. Maybe in this world, she might actually like pets. Back then, she never did. But if she were to see something cool, something majestic like a dragon, wouldn't she fall in love with it? He didn't know if Alicia still disliked animals or not. That version of her was in the past, a past that had long since shattered. The only way he could know was by asking her. And to do that, he first had to heal her. His gaze, once softened, turned cold again. Ash had also noticed something else about himself lately, something that bothered him in quiet moments. After dying and coming back so many times, the crack in his emotions lock has widened and also became unpredictable. As if whatever mechanism inside him that had shut down was now trying to reconnect itself. Not fully functional, but glitching back to life. Felt like a broken remote, flickering in and out of function. Sometimes he could express too much. Other times, nothing at all. He didn't know what was happening to him anymore. Just as he sank deeper into those thoughts, a familiar voice came from behind. "Is he asleep?" Ash looked up and replied quietly, "Yes." Solareth stood there, staring at Ash and the boy resting on his lap. A faint bitterness passed through his eyes. They formed such a bond, he thought, a weary sigh trapped in his chest. If I'd known it would turn out this way, maybe I should have just let him leave back then. But regrets held no value now. He stepped forward and gently lifted Eric into his arms. After a brief pause, he asked, "Will you be leaving next week then?" "Yes," Ash responded without hesitation. Now that he had a solid understanding of runic magic, what he needed next was deeper knowledge. More about elements. Lightning he could study from the libraries available. Life, for that he planned to head to the elves. And as for death, let's leave that for now. Shaking his head slowly with a mixture of disbelief and reluctant admiration, Solareth said, "I honestly don't know where a monster like you even came from. You've managed to learn runic magic without any base or foundation to build on, and your natural talent for magic is truly something else. At this point, I'm honestly at a loss for words. There's really nothing more I can say." Ash's lips curled into a bitter, almost reluctant smile as he heard those words, because for the first time ever, Someone had praised him not just as a student, but as a prodigy worth marveling at. "None of this would have been possible without your guidance," Ash replied softly, his voice carrying quiet gratitude. "You've been the only reason I made it this far." Salareth shook his head again, a small chuckle escaping him. "You're far too modest, Ash, but that's what makes you, you." He straightened, the corners of his eyes crinkling in an almost fatherly way. "Keep pushing, but don't forget to rest sometimes. Talent alone won't carry you forever." Ash nodded, feeling the truth in Salareth's words more than he wanted to admit. "I'll call you when dinner's ready," Salareth said, turning to leave while carefully cradling Eric in his arms. Salareth had already come to understand Ash well. Besides eating, sleeping, and taking care of the basics, Ash's time was almost entirely devoted to training, relentlessly pushing himself forward like a man possessed. Turning his gaze back up toward the sky, Ash allowed his thoughts to drift as he began quietly planning for the uncertain future. And just like that, another week slipped by, bringing with it the long-awaited day when Ash would finally leave the unicorn family behind. Chapter 115. Entering the Ancient Ruin. "Are you sure about this? Wouldn't it be better to wake him up and say goodbye face to face?" Lumiel asked softly, her voice carrying a gentle concern that made the moment feel heavier. Ash shook his head slowly, his silvery white hair moving gently with the motion. "No, I'm choosing this exact time to leave because I know he'll be sleeping now. It feels like the right moment." Hearing that, Lumiel sighed quietly, a mixture of sadness and understanding in her breath, while Salareth looked at Ash with a slight, knowing smile and said, "Let him be for now. It's not like he won't be coming back, right?" Ash's expression remained calm, almost emotionless, but a small, faint smile curved his lips as he replied, "I will come back, maybe once a week, but only if the journey I'm about to undertake succeeds." Both Lumiel and Salareth exchanged a glance of quiet confusion but didn't press for more details. They understood without words that if Ash's journey bore fruit, they would know when he returned. It was the kind of patience and trust that grows with age and experience, the maturity to accept uncertainty without demanding answers right away. Then, with a smooth flick of his wrist, Salareth summoned a small necklace, delicate and glowing faintly with soft hues of rainbow and white. "Here, take this," Salareth said as he extended the necklace toward Ash. The chain shimmered softly with pure white color, and the heart-shaped necklace was filled with rainbow hue that glowed faintly, as if holding some quiet power within. Curiously, Ash tilted his head and asked, "What is this?" "It's a necklace of purity and protection," Lumiel replied gently, her voice carrying a warmth wrapped in lingering sorrow, as though the memories it brought still tugged at her heart. "It can save you from a life-threatening blow once every week, and yes, it's reusable. It also calms the mind, fills it with positive thoughts, and slowly washes away the negative emotions clouding the heart." Her voice trembled ever so slightly near the end, not from fear, but from something deeper, something that felt like love stretched thin by time. To Ash's surprise, Salareth spoke up before he could even ask anything further. His voice was quiet, slightly hoarse as he said, "It was meant to be a gift for our daughter, our late daughter. We crafted it with the intention of giving it to her, something special to keep her safe. But before we could even place it in her hands." His words trailed off, swallowed by silence that carried more weight than anything else he could have said. Ash looked at him closely then, and what he saw wasn't just a powerful mythical beast or a king of an entire race. He saw a father who had lost his light, a man who still carried rage that had nowhere left to go, and sorrow so old that it had stopped crying and simply lived quietly inside him. Ash could feel that pain, could sense the grief Salareth had buried deep inside, masked under layers of time and silence. But Ash didn't say anything in return. He had never been the kind of person who was good with words in moments like this. He didn't know how to offer comfort that wouldn't sound hollow. He wasn't good at farewells either, which was exactly why he had chosen to leave early in the morning, when Eric would still be asleep. Salareth's sentence was gently finished by Lumiel, who smiled faintly and added, She left before we ever got the chance to give it to her. And well, we couldn't possibly give something like this to our little boy now, could we? Her words ended with a soft chuckle, a mix of wistfulness and fondness hidden behind the joke. This could easily be worn by men too. Are they just trying to find a reason to hand it over to me like this? Ash thought to himself, sensing something unspoken in their words. As if reading his thoughts, Lumiel continued with a playful grin. And I heard from Solareth that you have a partner, so why not give it to her instead? I believe it'll suit her beautifully. With this on her neck, I'm sure she'll look even more radiant. Not that I've seen her yet, but when she's healed and is all better, make sure to bring her here, all right? Ash felt a faint heat rise to his cheeks at her teasing tone. He glanced away, not answering, but his small, awkward movement made them both chuckle. Oh, and before I forget, Solareth added, as though suddenly remembering something important. There's a small spatial pocket inside the necklace about the size of a room. Time doesn't move in there at all, which means food or anything you place inside it will never go bad. Ash traced the edges of the necklace with his thumb, his eyes widening slightly as he looked up at Solareth and Lumiel, two parents who still carried love for a child they could no longer see. It was clear now just how much care, thought, and love had been poured into this item. And now, they were giving that love to him. This wasn't just a protective charm. It was something made with the deepest love a parent could offer their child. Feeling little sentimental, he silently vowed to protect the bearer of the necklace with all his strength. Does that mean I won't be able to store it in my space ring? Ash asked, glancing up with slight concern. Solareth shook his head with a gentle smile and explained, No, you don't have to worry. The necklace is made from a rare or found in the space itself. It's compatible with any spatial ring, so you'll be able to store it safely without any issues. Hearing that, Ash let out a soft sigh of relief, a small breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. That's good. I'm glad it can be stored safely. I wouldn't want to risk damaging something so precious by leaving it outside. With care, he placed the necklace inside a small, cushioned box, then stored it securely within his space ring. Once done, he turned toward the Unicorn King and Queen, the couple who had guided him, trusted him, and taught him during this strange, unforgettable time. He took a slow step forward, lowered his head, and bowed deeply, his voice calm but filled with sincerity. Thank you for everything, for trusting me, for teaching me. I promise, one day, I'll find a way to repay your kindness. The two of them merely chuckled quietly at his words, their expressions soft and knowing. After living with him for an entire month, they had come to understand his nature well. His awkwardness, his sincerity, his quiet determination, they had grown familiar with it all. His behavior didn't surprise them anymore. It only made them smile. I'll be leaving now, Ash said, his voice steady and filled with a quiet determination that didn't need to be loud to be strong. Solareth stepped forward, walking beside him without a word. He raised one hand and placed it gently on Ash's shoulder. In an instant, a warm glow of ether mana began to swirl around Ash's body, wrapping him in a soft, protective light that shimmered like stardust. Good luck, Solareth said, his voice low but firm, filled with silent wishes and unspoken hopes. As the light of teleportation began to rise beneath his feet, Ash turned slightly toward the sleeping chamber. Don't miss me too much, Fluffball. That was the last thing Ash thought, before the world around him faded into light, and his body vanished. Am I inside the mountains? Ash thought as he looked around. All he could see were giant peaks stretching in every direction. The mountains were covered in sharp rocks, tall trees, and an endless variety of plants and animals. The air smelled fresh, like moss and wet leaves. Birds chirped in the distance, and the wind brushed softly against his skin. Everything felt wild and untouched, like a hidden world waiting to be explored. He brought out the red bead, which was the map of the ruins, and looked at it carefully. I am almost there. If I run at full speed, I can reach the place within half an hour. Did Solareth know my destination was in the mountains? Did he send me here on purpose, knowing he wasted 1 whole month of my time? Was this his way of saying sorry in his own way? Ash was not sure, but he was thankful to be close to the ruins. Let's go. No more wasting time. Ash started running toward the place shown on the map. He jumped across rocks, climbed steep paths, and followed narrow trails. The uneven ground made it harder than he expected. After about an hour, he finally reached the location. I guess it took over 1 hour to find this place, Ash muttered to himself. Walking and climbing around the rough mountain terrain had taken longer than he thought. Also, searching for the exact spot of the ruin had added more time. Now, where is the entrance to the ruin? He said while looking around with a serious expression. In the novel, when Ray came here, the entrance had already been opened. There was nothing left inside except the ruin. Mirek and Zarek had already taken everything important. After that, even scavengers probably came and took whatever little remained. Ash used at least 15 minutes searching for the entrance, but found nothing. He checked the map again. It showed that he was standing in the exact right place. Looks like I have to use it, Ash thought as he softly said, Omni thought. Suddenly, the world lost its colors. Everything became quiet and clear. His senses grew sharp and wide, like a wave spreading across a lake. He could feel every small detail around him, the roughness of the rocks, the shape of every leaf, the movements of birds nearby, and even the flow of mana in the air. Even the mana inside the rocks. Wait, mana inside the rocks? Ash was surprised. He looked at the ground below him and saw that the mana veins were gathering in one place, like lightning lines drawn into a single point. Was I standing on the switch the whole time? Ash laughed at himself inside his head and moved to the side. He turned off Omni Thought, and this time he did not feel any headache. He was getting used to it. He cleared the grass and weeds from the ground, revealing a small hole made of smooth stone. It had a shape that looked very familiar. This shape, doesn't it match the bead? Ash whispered, tracing the hole with his finger. Without wasting a moment, he placed the bead inside it. As soon as the bead settled perfectly into the hole, a deep hum echoed from beneath the earth, like the forgotten heartbeat of something ancient finally stirring awake. The ground beneath Ash's feet began to tremble with a steady, growing rhythm, as if the mountain's heart was beating. There was no big crash or flash. Instead, the front wall of the mountain moved slowly, sliding to the side with a soft grinding sound. Dust and tiny stones fell quietly as the heavy stone door opened, revealing a dark passage inside. A cool breeze blew out from the opening, carrying the smell of old earth and secrets hidden for a long, long time. Ash stood still for a moment, staring into the dark tunnel. There it is, he said quietly. Without thinking about anything else, he stepped into the dark entrance of the ruin. Chapter 116, Ancient Ruin Exploration 1. Just as Ash stepped into the dark passage of the ancient ruin, the door behind him quietly slid shut, just like it had opened. It sealed the entrance without making a sound, locking him inside. Then, slowly, small fire lamps along the wall began to light up one after another, pushing back the shadows and filling the passage with a soft, warm glow. Why does this feel so familiar? Right. The dungeon exploration. The way the lights lit up, the air, even the silence. It's the same. With that thought, Ash moved forward, his pace quick and steady. The path was straight and wide enough for 5 people to walk through side by side. He wasn't worried. In the novel, this part of the ruin was described clearly in a single line. As Ray moved along the empty passage, which was devoid of any disturbance and traps, just a normal passage. So Ash kept walking, step by step, while Eclipse rested calmly in his hand. As he moved forward, new lamps lit up ahead, lighting his path without pause. After about 2 or 3 minutes, the narrow corridor opened into a wider space. It was a small open area, roughly the size of a basketball court. The floor was smooth and solid, carved with old patterns and symbols that seemed to serve no purpose other than decoration. Though it was open, the space was surrounded by a glowing blue barrier, like a shield stopping anyone from entering. And instead of fire lamps, The air was lit by floating orbs of light, slowly drifting above the ground, casting a calm, bluish hue across the area. Ash stepped forward and stared at the space ahead. Now what? Just as Ash thought that, a soft flash of light appeared in front of him, and slowly, a large holographic dragon began to take shape. Its glowing form hovered above the ground with a faint blue shimmer. Welcome, Challenger. You are the first person to appear here in the past thousands of years. Until now, no one has managed to discover this hidden trial site. Ash's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the glowing dragon. For a moment, he was caught off guard by its sudden appearance. But as soon as he noticed that it was a hologram, he let out a quiet breath and relaxed his shoulders. Looking at the hologram's distant gaze, Ash thought, so it's just a pre-recorded hologram? Damn, it really scared me for a second back there. And the theme is based on trials, huh? That's not bad at all. It probably means I have a good chance to increase my stats through these trials. The mechanical voice continued in the same calm and steady rhythm. There are 6 trials that you must go through. If you die during any of them, it will count as a real death. You cannot leave this sacred ground until you have cleared all 6 trials. Ash tilted his head slightly, a faint, amused expression appearing on his face. Death, is it? Can I even die after having Rune of Life and Death with me? I don't think I'll be dying here, not anytime soon, he thought with a quiet smugness. After completing each trial, you will receive a reward. If you manage to complete all 6 trials, a bonus reward will be granted. This is a one-time clear trial ground, made for the chosen one. Once cleared, no one else will ever be able to undertake the trials again, and this spirit will vanish completely. So that's the reason why nothing was ever found here in the story. Looks like one of the demons completed all the trials already and wiped everything clean. Also, did he just say chosen one? Don't tell me this was something made for Ray. But the demon stole his opportunity. If that's true, then that means that dumbass also lost many opportunities in the novel. It just wasn't mentioned. Suddenly, he felt less guilty for stealing Ray's opportunities. But do I even feel guilty? No, I like stealing his opportunities. Ash thought this with a small smile forming on his lips, a hint of satisfaction filling his eyes. Now, Challenger, you will proceed to your first trial. Trial 1. Dodge and survive. Initiating. As soon as the voice finished speaking, the glowing blue barrier that had covered the area began to fade away slowly, revealing the path ahead of him in clear view. Dodge and survive. Huh? That sounds like something related to reaction or movement, something that tests agility or speed. Just then, a shining arrow made of pure light appeared in front of him, pointing towards the open area, as if guiding him towards the next part of the trial. Without wasting any time, Ash calmly followed the glowing arrow until he found himself standing right in the center of the circular grounds. Trial 1. Dodge and survive. Normal clear condition. Dodge all the destructive beams of light and survive for 30 minutes. Perfect clear condition. Dodge all the destructive beams of light without getting hit and survive for 1 hour. The same cold, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. It held no emotion, no hesitation. It was like listening to a machine reading out an ancient rulebook, a voice that had repeated the same thing countless times for challengers who never came. Ash raised an eyebrow slightly and let the words settle in his mind for a moment before speaking. What does normal and perfect clear condition mean exactly? He asked, not even sure if the voice would respond. But the hologram did reply, as if the question had already been predicted and programmed in it long ago. Normal clear condition means that even if you are hit during the trial but somehow manage to survive for 30 minutes, you will pass the trial and proceed to the next one. However, the reward granted will be significantly lower. As for the perfect clear condition, I believe you are smart enough to understand that on your own. Ash nodded slowly, taking in the explanation as the pieces began to fit together inside his head. I see. So it is like that. Even if someone gets hit, they can still pass as long as they survive. But only those who avoid everything completely will get the best reward. I wonder how the demons cleared this trial. Did they manage a perfect clear? There was no answer to that. Ash didn't know, and there was no way to find out now. Let the trial commence. As soon as the mechanical voice faded, the ground beneath him trembled lightly, and the smooth wall around the arena began to glow. The symbols that had looked like random decoration just moments ago suddenly shifted and changed, revealing their true purpose. From the walls, several small cannon-shaped emitters emerged. Each one was no larger than the palm of a human hand, but something about them felt far more dangerous than their size suggested. Ash glanced at them calmly, then stored Eclipse back into its ring form. There was no point in holding onto a sword in a trial meant for dodging. Instead, he began to loosen his body, gently stretching out his arms and legs as his breathing steadied. "Let's do it," he muttered under his breath. His heart began to race, and the blood in his veins surged with energy. Whether it was excitement or fear, even he wasn't sure. The cannons began to glow slowly, gathering energy deep within their cores, and seeing that, Ash whispered the words. "Lightning reflex." As soon as the words left his mouth, mana surged through his body. There was no need for delicate control this time. The pure mana was converted instantly into crackling lightning and began to stimulate every nerve in his system. Every neuron sparked to life. From his brain down to the very tips of his fingers and toes, every part of him became alert. A string of golden symbols, woven together like a circuit of glowing white mana, bloomed from the crown of his head, forming a delicate band of light that circled just above his forehead, rotating slowly, as if syncing to an unseen rhythm. The world around him slowed down. He could feel everything. The slight tremor in the air before a blast, the shifting mana in the walls, even the subtle warmth radiating from the cannon. "Let's see how far this lower version of Omni-Thought can take me," he thought, a faint grin tugging at the corner of his lips. And then all hell broke loose. Almost instantly, one beam was fired. Ash calmly dodged it by stepping to the side. Then, another beam followed, and he once again avoided it with the same composed ease. The scene continued like that for about 2 minutes, single beams being fired in succession, and Ash dodging them without much effort, almost as if his body had already adapted to the rhythm. However, the pace soon began to shift. The speed at which the beams were fired started to increase. This time, 2 beams were launched at once, one aimed straight at his head, the other targeting his leg. Ash moved swiftly, adjusting his leg slightly while tilting his head to the side at the same time. It was a clean dodge, executed with the kind of calm that only comes from complete focus and trust in one's reflexes. The same pattern continued for another 2 minutes. Then, right on cue, the number of beams increased from 2 to 3. As he watched the trio of beams heading straight for him, one aiming for his eye, another for his heart, and the third for his leg, Ash thought to himself while moving his body to dodge. Is it increasing by 1 beam every 2 minutes? If that's the case, does that mean during the last 2 minutes of this trial, I'll have to dodge 30 beams at once? Damn, this trial is seriously tough. He performed a quick cartwheel to avoid all 3 beams. But almost immediately before he could land, another 3 beams shot toward him. Without hesitation, Ash stopped his cartwheel mid-motion, pushed his body into the air using the momentum, and twisted around to dodge the incoming barrage. It was a close call, but his body responded just in time. As he landed, panting lightly, he noticed something. Whenever a beam struck the ground, it wasn't leaving behind damage or scorch marks. Instead, the energy was absorbed into the surface. The intricate symbols etched into the floor glowed faintly each time, pulsing in sync with the beam's impact. It's recycling the energy, he realized. That's how it can sustain the trial without running out of power. He didn't have long to dwell on it, because the beams kept coming. He continued to dodge every attack. Sometimes, the beams missed him by no more than a hair's breadth. Sometimes they passed so close he could feel the static buzz ripple across his skin. But no matter how close it got, his body kept responding. His reflexes saved him again and again, each movement executed with instinct and clarity. The pressure kept increasing, but so did his awareness, and even in the chaos, he never allowed fear to take over. Chapter 117, Ancient Ruin Exploration 2. Ash moved to the side, then shifted again, bent his knees low, jumped high into the air, and followed it with a clean backflip. As soon as his feet touched the ground, he dashed backward at an astonishing speed. His movements were seamless and wild. His figure blurred into streaks of motion, weaving through the beams with an intensity that felt almost inhuman. Every second, his body flowed through the chaos, each motion blending into the next with perfect timing. Occasionally, small sparks of lightning flickered in his wake, a byproduct of his modified lightning step. Unlike the original version that blasted him forward recklessly, Ash had revised it. Now, he could adjust the distance precisely, allowing for close-range movement without delay. Just as he caught a moment to breathe, 15 glowing beams suddenly surged toward him from multiple directions. Without a second of hesitation, Ash shot across the chamber. He darted through the assault, weaving left to right, up then down, diagonally, then sideways again. He tilted, spun, jumped, and rolled, each movement executed like a streak of lightning flashing across the air. Each movement chained into the next like a flowing dance, precise and instinctual. Despite the rising pressure in the room, Ash found his lips curling into a smile. Damn, I never imagined this would be so fun. Every time a beam missed him by inches, a jolt of exhilaration surged through his veins. A strange sense of satisfaction surged through him, the rush of movement, the dopamine of close calls. It was all starting to feel addictive. His blood was singing, his body alive in a way it hadn't been in a long time. As another beam screamed toward him, Ash tilted his head just slightly and rolled forward, the beam slicing through the air where he'd been just a heartbeat ago. Minutes passed like seconds, and before he realized it, 15 more minutes had gone by. Time continued to pass in that blur of movement and light. Before long, another 15 minutes had slipped away. The number of beams had climbed from 15 to 22, and with them, their speed had also increased. Swish, swish, swish. The beams tore through the air in rapid succession, but Ash's figure blurred to match their speed. His body was already in hypersensitive state with lightning reflex, constantly stimulating his neurons, sharpening every reaction and accelerating every movement like a finely tuned weapon. Whenever a beam came dangerously close, golden symbols would suddenly flare around his legs, each one blooming with a faint pulse of light, and his speed would spike again before the runes vanished into silence. That was lightning step in action, weaving seamlessly into his rhythm. But now Ash was no longer holding back. He began to enhance his legs with raw mana, pouring it directly into his muscles to push past his current limits. Every fiber of his being responded. The beams were increasing in number and ferocity, but so was he. This feeling, it's incredible, Ash thought, a grin tugging at the corner of his lips. He could sense the heat in the air, feel the subtle change before each cannon fired. The air would tighten for a split second, and he'd already be gone, moving ahead of the attack before it could even begin. Like this, he dodged beam after beam, one after another, with growing ease. Up to this point, not a single beam had managed to touch him. In fact, Ash had started to feel as if this trial was laughably easy. That is, until he stepped into the final 2 minutes. Panting heavily, Ash looked around the area with narrowed eyes, his chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. All the cannons were completely silent now. Not even a single beam was being fired anymore, and the entire space felt eerily calm. Is it over already? But there are still 2 minutes left on the clock. Ash thought to himself with a slight frown as his gaze landed on the glowing timer embedded into one of the distant walls. His stamina was dangerously close to its limit. It wasn't that he had run across a large area or covered great distance, but the way he had been moving, dodging at high speed, using sharp reflexes, twisting and reacting within fractions of seconds, had drained him more than any long-distance run ever could. The intensity of his movements, executed with constant pressure, was what consumed his stamina so brutally. Even his nerves were starting to heat up from the prolonged stimulation caused by the continuous activation of the lightning spells. His body felt like a charged wire under constant current. But fortunately, The moment a nerve was damaged or strained too far, the rune of life would quietly activate and begin repairing it from within, pulsing with a gentle light that soothed the pain. So, while he was aware of the damage, he wasn't exactly worried about it becoming critical. Instead, what brought a flicker of pride to his face was the fact that his lighting reflex was working exactly as he had hoped. It doesn't give me a splitting headache. There's no side effect weighing down on my mind. It might have one, but not one that really affects me. Honestly, it's kind of perfect when I'm up against a lot of enemies at once, as long as they're not individually too strong. I'll save Omni-Thought 4 times when I need to process countless variables all at once or when I'm fighting someone who completely outclasses me. That's when I'll need every corner of my mind operating at full power. His thoughts slowed for a moment as he stood there, chest still rising and falling, the silence stretching unnaturally around him. But right now, why have the beams stopped? Why is there this sudden pause? Something doesn't feel right. Ash narrowed his eyes as confusion started creeping into his mind like a shadow at the edge of light. He hated the silence more than anything else, because he knew the next wave of beams will be deadly. Like a calm before the storm. He looked around while trying to regulate his breathing, but nothing was happening. The silence remained unbroken, the cannons still unmoving. However, the moment his eyes caught the timer on the wall ticking down to the final 1-minute mark, something in the air shifted. Ash's instincts flared violently, sending sharp warning signals racing through every nerve in his body. His senses, already heightened from being in a hypersensitive state for so long, detected the change instantly. Danger was coming and fast. Without a second of hesitation, driven by a sense of impending threat, Ash activated Omni-Thought, and this time, he didn't even bother deactivating Lightning Reflex. The world around him slowed, like time itself was being pulled into molasses. His mind surged into overdrive, thought after thought firing with precise clarity. As he blinked and opened his eyes in this slowed world, his heart nearly skipped a beat. He was already surrounded. More than 30 glowing beams had already surrounded him from all directions. What the actual hell? Where did all of these come from? There are over 30. Don't tell me every cannon is firing at once now. And what is this speed? It's insane. His eyes widened as he stared at the swarm of beams near him. He was already moving at a pace that most novice-rank combatants couldn't even dream of, and if it had been anyone else at that level, they would have been obliterated several rounds ago. Even though Ash had the massive advantage of holding 2 cores, giving him the strength equivalent to an apprentice-rank fighter, this situation was still far beyond overwhelming. There's no opening. No gap at all. Ash scanned the barrage for a way out, but nothing presented itself. Still, he didn't hesitate. He pushed his body to move, and was shocked to feel himself accelerating faster than even he had expected. What? Is it because I'm using Omni-Thought and Lightning Reflex together? Are they amplifying each other? His thoughts sharpened, a plan forming in the span of a breath. If this is what I can do now, then let's take it one step further, let's go beyond. Lightning Step. Ash muttered softly, but the effect was anything but gentle. The very air around him trembled from the pressure of his sudden burst of speed. Omni-Thought plus Lightning Reflex plus Lightning Step. It was a combo Ash had never dared to try before, but now, using all 3 at once, it felt like he had stepped into a whole new dimension of speed and awareness. With Omni-Thought active, he didn't have to worry about controlling his mana or juggling his senses. Everything synced effortlessly, like a perfect rhythm. He literally vanished from the eye of the storm, and like a flash of lightning, he was already outside the deadly encirclement. Why the hell did I never try this before? This is insane, he thought, his heart racing with adrenaline. But then, a sudden sharp heat on his side pulled his attention back. Glancing down, Ash's eyes widened in shock. His left arm was gone. Not a trace left behind, not even a drop of blood. The temperature of that beam was so extreme that his flesh and blood had disintegrated instantly. When? Ash whispered in disbelief. He was sure he had dodged every beam. How could one have caught him at this speed? Even with Omni-Thought activated, I got hit? Before he could dwell on it, His arm began to regenerate right before his eyes, flesh knitting back rapidly, faster than anyone could normally heal. And just as the next volley of attacks began to surge forward, his arm was completely restored, looking as good as new. Looks like I need to get even more serious. With determination burning bright, Ash stepped forward and vanished again. Time stretched and warped. That one intense minute felt like an entire hour to him. He moved relentlessly, flowing ahead of every beam, never waiting, always striking just beyond the reach of danger. It was like watching blue lightning dance across the battlefield. Despite his speed and skill, the brutal barrage managed to hit him at least 2 more times before the timer finally hit 0. Huff! 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 Panting heavily, Ash breathed out, "Damn, that was brutal." He pulled out a bottle of water and took a long drink, quenching the fierce thirst burning in his throat. Looking around, the surroundings appeared peaceful, as if nothing had just unfolded. But only he truly knew the truth. The last 1 minute was the real test. Everything before had been just a warm-up. But I got hit 3 times. Does that mean I failed? His voice was quiet but serious, questioning himself honestly. He wasn't upset about being hit 3 times. He knew he had given it his all, and that was what mattered most. Just then, a hologram materialized right in front of him. The hologram stared intently at him, and a sharp light flashed from its eyes, scanning Ash's body within a second before it finally spoke. "Congratulations, Challenger, for perfectly clearing Trial 1. There are no injuries on your body, a true testament to your ability to dodge every attack. For performing so splendidly, you will be rewarded with Chapter 118, Ancient Ruin Exploration 3. Congratulations, Challenger, for perfectly clearing Trial 1. There are no injuries on your body, a true testament to your ability to dodge every attack." Does that mean the hologram actually examines the body for injuries and then uses that information to determine whether the person got hit or not? Damn. Whoever created this place must have been one hell of a lunatic. For performing so splendidly, you will be rewarded with Reward 1, Prime Shard. Description: increases your stats by +4 points randomly. Reward 2, Unnamed Boots. Description: a mysterious piece from Nameless Equipment Set. These boots will only reveal their true power when all 6 matching pieces are worn together. Until then, they remain nothing more than ornamental gear with no special effect. Reward 3, Enigma Pouch. Description: Challenger, test your luck. If fortune smiles upon you, this pouch may contain a powerful spell. However, if your luck runs dry, then congratulations, you receive absolutely nothing. Once opened, the pouch will vanish, regardless of what it contains. The space in front of Ash shimmered gently, like a stone dropped into still water beneath moonlight. Then, with a quiet flash of mana, the 3 rewards materialized before him, hovering a few inches above the ground as if resting on an invisible platform made of magic. A delicate hum filled the air, soft and steady, as faint trails of light wrapped around each item, highlighting their importance and power. The first item, a smooth, crystal-like shard, glowed with a soft, warm orange light. Its surface was polished and clear, and with every passing second, it pulsed faintly, like the beat of a hidden heart. This was the Prime Shard. Next to it, a pair of boots made of dark, gleaming material rested silently. They didn't emit any light, nor did they carry any sense of power on the surface, but there was something strange about them. The final item was a small leather pouch, brown in color, tied neatly with a golden string. Its surface was slightly worn, with visible creases and folds, yet it radiated a subtle and mysterious aura. This was the Enigma Pouch. Challenger, prepare yourself. Trial 2 will begin whenever you are ready. Until then, recover, reflect, and rise. With those last words fading away, the hologram slowly broke apart into tiny sparkling lights, disappearing as quietly as it had appeared. The room grew calm again, filled only with the soft, distant hum of magic hanging in the air. Ash let out a long breath he didn't even know he was holding. His legs gave out, and he dropped down hard onto the cold stone floor, finally letting his body rest after all the non-stop movement and strain. Man, even though it was super exhausting, it was actually kind of fun, he muttered with a small, tired smile, still catching his breath. He looked over at the descriptions of the 3 rewards floating in front of him. He wasn't sure how the words showed up, probably some trick of the trial ground, but he didn't really care. He grabbed the prime shard and held it closer. Okay, how do I use this? Do I have to break it? Ash wondered aloud. Pressing it gently, the shard suddenly cracked and shattered into tiny orange particles that floated right into his body, vanishing as they were absorbed. Almost instantly, his body twitched like a worm squirming in the dirt, but the tight feeling from all the strain started to fade away, replaced by a fresh, light energy. Wow, this is awesome. He opened his attributes panel to check the changes. Attributes: Strength, 185. Agility, 185. Vitality, 185. Intelligence, 185. Stamina, 185. Charm, 185. Mana, 185 x2. It increased. There are still 5 more trials. If I clear them all, I'll get 20 more stat points. That's pretty sweet, he muttered. But is this really the secret behind how Mirek and Zarek got so strong? Somehow, I don't think that's the whole story. Well, I guess I'll find out in the other trials. With that, Ash shifted his focus to the second reward. Unnamed boots, huh? Let's see what these are all about. He slipped off his regular boots and put on the unnamed boots. They fit perfectly, hugging his feet with a snug, comfortable feeling that made the old ones feel like bricks. But aside from that comfort, there was nothing. No sudden power surge, no magical effect, no boost. Just like the description said, I guess I really need all 6 pieces to see what these boots can actually do, he muttered, tapping his heel against the floor and watching for any kind of reaction. With a small sigh, he turned to the last reward, the Enigma pouch. Luck, huh? Yeah, right. Knowing how these things go, I'm probably getting nothing, Ash said with a dry chuckle as he untied the golden string and opened the pouch. The moment the pouch opened, a blinding golden light burst out, lighting up the chamber with a glow so bright it almost made him flinch. Wait, did I actually get something? Hope sparked in his chest for a moment. But before he could react, the pouch crumbled into fine dust, disappearing into the air. All that remained were 4 glowing words hanging where the pouch had been. Better luck next time. And just like that, even those words faded into nothing. Ash blinked at the empty space, his face blank for a moment. Then he sighed and let his shoulders drop. Yep, even this thing is making fun of me now. Shaking his head, he walked back to the center of the chamber and lay down, finally letting his mind rest. The cool floor was oddly comforting, and his eyes slowly drifted shut. Time passed. Around 2 hours slipped by as Ash dozed off, letting his body recover from all the dodging, thinking, and pure chaos of the first trial. When he woke up, his limbs felt light, his mind clear, and his energy back to full. Stretching with a yawn, he stood up, fists clenched and eyes focused. I'm ready to take the second trial, he shouted, voice echoing through the chamber. Moving to the second trial ground, Ash found himself facing the next challenge. Trial 2. Climb the stairs. Normal clear condition. Climb up the stairs. With each step you take, the gravity around your body will increase. Perfect clear condition. Climb the stairs while wearing weights. The weights will also increase with every step you take, and the surrounding gravity will intensify as well. Looking at the staircase, which stretched up around 50 steps, Ash thought to himself, so now it's a trial of strength? Well, I've had some training in that area already. Almost every time he trained, Ash would wear the weight-enhancing suit. That suit was designed to make everything harder by increasing the weight on his body. It made his daily training feel like fighting underwater. He used it so often that it felt natural to him. So for him, this kind of trial actually felt like welcome news. Of course, he wasn't wearing that suit now. It had been damaged from overuse after being pushed to its limits due to his constant training. Ash stepped forward and reached for the weights, which turned out to be a set of metallic rings resting on a small pedestal. As soon as his fingers touched them, the rings floated up into the air with a faint shimmer of light. They hovered for a moment before snapping onto his body, wrapping around his wrists, his ankles, and even around his neck like a choker. Ash stared down at himself and let out a tired sigh. So this is how it works, huh? These damn rings. I look like an ancient slave dragged out of some Egyptian tomb, he muttered under his breath, his voice dry and annoyed. Still, he didn't hesitate. With quiet determination, he turned toward the stairs. Let the trial begin. The hologram spoke those words before fading out of sight, leaving Ash standing alone in the trial chamber. He took a deep breath to steady himself, then raised one foot and climbed the first step. The moment his foot landed, the runes engraved into the floor pulsed with light, and the metallic rings on his body began to glow faintly. In an instant, the air around him grew heavier. The previously weightless rings became noticeably heavier, pressing down on his limbs and neck. On top of that, he could feel something strange suppressing his mana, blocking it from flowing freely. So that's how it is, Ash realized silently. This trial wants me to rely purely on physical strength, not mana. All right then, that's fine by me. In a way, this is just another form of training. With a calm expression and steady breath, he continued to climb, step by step. And with every step, the weight on his body grew heavier, and the gravity pressing down on him intensified, testing the limits of his endurance with quiet, suffocating pressure. Chapter 119, Ancient Ruin Exploration, 4. Ash took another step forward, and once again the weight on his body increased. It wasn't just a small change. The pressure around him felt like someone had pressed down a huge invisible hand, making everything heavier and harder to move through. It's still bearable, he thought, forcing his body to stay balanced as he climbed up. His breath came out slowly, and he stayed focused. This was the 10th step. By now, the gravity around him had become 10 times stronger than normal. The weight on his body, which came from the glowing rings on his wrists, ankles, and neck, had reached about 100 kilograms. Each step added 10 more kilograms, and the gravity increased with every step in the same way. He pushed himself up again. His muscles cried out in protest, and his legs felt tight and heavy. A sharp pressure was building in his shoulders and back, and his arms were getting harder to lift. But it was not too much. He had trained with heavy weights before. While this trial added gravity, something he wasn't used to, his body could still handle it. His training back at the academy, using the weighted suit almost every day, had made his body used to carrying pressure. It had made him stronger little by little. Even if the suit was damaged now, his body hadn't forgotten the feeling. By the time he reached the 20th step, the weight had grown to 200 kilograms, and the gravity around him was 20 times stronger than normal. It was like trying to move through water that had turned thick like syrup. Every step made his body shake, and sweat started to drip from his chin and forehead. Damn, it's actually working, Ash muttered. His voice was low, and he was breathing harder, but there was a small smile on his face. His body was trembling under the pressure, but deep inside he felt good. It was a familiar feeling, one that reminded him of his past training. He was finally feeling that same pressure again, the kind that made him grow stronger with every second. Add more, he whispered to himself, his tone steady, as he pushed forward again. His eyes were focused, and his body moved with a rhythm, step after step, as if he was ready to carry even more. Even though it was painful, even though it burned, Ash didn't stop. He kept climbing because this was the kind of pain that made him feel alive. The kind that told him he was getting better. While Ash continued to climb the stairs inside the second trial ground, slowly being crushed under the growing weight and gravity, far away at the Starlight Academy, something else was happening. A different kind of chaos was beginning to rise, hidden behind calm walls. Few weeks before Ash entered the ruin. Starlight Academy. Have they all arrived? The Whisperer asked calmly. Yes, I even called back all the fourth years. Now every student from the first, second, third, and fourth year is present in the Academy Hall, Nicole replied. His voice was calm, but filled with respect. The atmosphere in the room was tense. All 7 saints were present, standing quietly. After all, the man they faced wasn't just anyone. Back when he was still the principal of the academy, he had taken all 7 of them as his disciples. The Whisperer knew his time was nearing its end, so he wanted someone worthy to take his place. Not that he was sure whether he would truly die. Now that fate had changed, even he didn't know, but still, back then he had prepared for the possibility. When those 7, now saints, had first appeared as children, he had seen the potential in them. So, with hope in his heart, he had taken them in as his disciples. "Let's go then," the Whisperer said softly as he began walking forward. The 7 saints followed behind him in complete silence. Not a single word was spoken. As they reached the Academy Hall, the Whisperer spoke again. "Nicole boy, you're the principal now. You take the lead. I will be watching from the sidelines, since I need to use my powers. As for the rest of you, do not take any action unless necessary. If the anomaly tries to escape, catch him. But do not harm him." Hearing his clear instructions, they all replied together, their voices strong and united. "Yes, Master. Let's see if you are here." The Whisperer had already examined all the staff and teachers, but he found no one who was deeply connected to fate. That only left the students. "I hope you turn out to be the savior, not a destroyer." With a small sigh, he vanished from his spot. He became invisible. After all, as the seer who had watched entire civilizations rise and fall, he had the ability to vanish from people's sight whenever he wished. Nicole walked into the hall, taking calm steps toward the center. As he stood before the crowd of students, he began speaking. His voice carried gently through the air, talking about the recent incident at the academy, offering guidance and news. Meanwhile, the other 6 saints moved silently, spreading out across the hall. Each one sharpened their senses to the limit, eyes and minds focused on every detail inside the grand hall. Not a single movement escaped their notice. The Whisperer silently stood beside Nicole. The wheel in his eyes began to spin rapidly, and suddenly, everyone's fate lines became visible to him. He slowly moved his head, looking at each student. All of them were normal. None of them had more than one fate line. Each one had only their own fate. Then his eyes fell on his adopted granddaughter. She stood there, completely untouched by destiny. Looks like she awakened her affinity. A gentle smile rose on his face. Good, very good. Sending her to the academy was the right choice. Now I can finally begin teaching her properly. He thought to himself with pride, feeling the small spark of hope flicker again in his ancient heart. He also looked around, slowly scanning the crowd, and then his eyes landed on Ray Dawson. The moment he saw him, his eyes slightly widened in surprise as a strange feeling rose in his chest. Who is he? The Whisperer wondered silently. Ray was surrounded by many fate lines. For a moment, the Whisperer thought that maybe he had finally found the anomaly he was searching for. But then, as he looked more closely, his thoughts changed. These fate lines, they are so badly damaged. It's almost like someone has taken away what originally belonged to him, and in return, gave him a completely different direction in life. He continued to observe every student one by one, looking carefully across all the years. But even after going through every phase from the 4th year, 3rd year, 2nd year, and 1st year, he still did not find the one he was truly looking for. Although there were some students who had more than one fate line attached to them, he assumed it was probably because the anomaly had interacted with them before, so he decided not to pay much attention to them. Instead, his focus shifted completely onto Ray Dawson. His eyes began to glow with a brighter light, sharper and more intense than before, as he stared at Ray with deep curiosity. Who are you? With that thought, all the details about Ray's life began to appear before the Whisperer. His past, everything he had done so far. However, there was one thing missing. The system remained hidden, even from his gaze. Ray Dawson? Isn't he the disciple of Nicole Boy? But what is this strange case of his broken fate? The whisperer became more serious, and then he went even deeper, peeling away the layers of space and time, searching for the truth that had existed before Ash altered it. Finally, he found it. The moment he saw the original, unaltered fate ray had been born with, his expression completely changed. His calm eyes trembled slightly, and a cold chill slowly crept into them as the truth struck him. What? What is this? The cause behind the world's destruction. Is him? So all those visions I had before the anomaly appeared, were they about him all along? Even before Ash had appeared in this world, the Whisperer had seen glimpses of its fate. He had known that someone was going to be responsible for the destruction of the world. But no matter how hard he searched, it was nearly impossible to uncover anything about that person. It felt as if fate itself refused to let the truth be revealed. Back then, after he stepped down from his role as the principal, he was again bound to another place. He couldn't freely move or investigate as he once did. And because of that, he had no way to track down the true cause of what was coming. If not for the recent weakening of cause and effect, and if he hadn't come face to face with Ray today, he might have never discovered the truth, even now. He's the one behind the destruction of the world, the one who will bring the unification of the universe, the one who should have been a hero, but is more like a destroyer. For the first time in thousands of years, a dangerous killing intent quietly bubbled up in his eyes. But the moment that thought formed in his mind, he suddenly felt the grip of causality tighten around him like an invisible snake, wrapping around his soul, threatening to crush him completely. He immediately realized that if he even moved a single finger with the intent to harm Ray, the very threads of causality would tear him apart without hesitation. Damn this fate. I've never hated it so much until now. Take my life if you want. But let me kill him, just once. But the grip of causality only grew stronger in response, as if mocking his helplessness. You bastard! The Whisperer clenched his jaw, teeth grinding in frustration. He wanted to scream, but what could he do? Even though he knew Ray might be innocent right now, what about the billions of people who would die in the future because this one person was allowed to live? Isn't life truly unfair? But then again, he also understood that life had never been fair to anyone. Those born in noble houses and upper-class families had every privilege handed to them. Those born in the middle class had to struggle every step of the way. If they succeeded, they might rise higher, but if not, they were simply stuck in the cycle. And as for those born in the lower class, unless something miraculous happened, their fate was already sealed from birth. He had always known how fickle fate could be, but never, in all his years, had he hated it this deeply. Damned Fate. Chapter 120. Ancient Ruin Exploration. 5. Feeling that he might not be able to do anything, he forcefully calmed himself down, suppressing the storm inside. Without another word, he turned around and silently left the place. Before leaving, he sent a telepathic message to the Saints, instructing them to return. Nicole, after saying a few brief words to the crowd, dismissed everyone and quietly followed after his master. They all gathered at the rooftop of the academy, where the wind was strong and the view endless. The old man stood at the edge, gazing up at the vast sky, his eyes filled with bitterness. But there was nothing he could do now. His hands were tied, bound by fate itself. Master, did you find the one you were looking for? Mark asked, stepping forward carefully, trying not to disturb the heavy silence. But the Whisperer didn't respond immediately. His silence stretched for a long moment. Just as Alice was about to speak, he finally answered, his voice low and distant. He was not among them. When I sent Amelia here, he was still in the academy. But now, he's gone. Hearing that, everyone fell silent, the weight of his words settling on their shoulders like a stone. The Whisperer wanted to tell his disciples about Ray. He tried, he truly did, but whenever he attempted to say anything about him, no words would come out of his mouth. It was as if the air itself refused to carry his voice. It seems that after the anomaly plundered Ray's fate to such an extent, fate itself has become overprotective of him. almost like someone trying to shield a loved one, no matter the cost. The old man understood that the only reason the fate of someone who was supposed to be a hero could be this damaged was because of the interference of the fate disruptor, the anomaly. Does that mean he left the academy? Nicole, has any student dropped out recently? Myra asked, turning to him. But the moment she spoke those words, a sharp jolt ran through all 7 of their minds, like a flash of lightning. It was sudden, blinding, and in that instant they remembered. They turned to look at each other in shock, their eyes wide, expressions dazed and confused, as if something long forgotten had just slammed back into place. Seeing their strange behavior, the old man narrowed his eyes, puzzled. "What is it?" he asked slowly, his voice tinged with suspicion. But no one answered. They just stood there in silence, glancing between one another with uncertain eyes. Noticing their hesitation, the old man turned his gaze toward Myra and asked again, this time more firmly, "Myra, girl, tell me, what is it?" Myra paused, her lips parting slightly as she wrestled with the thought of whether to speak. After a moment of hesitation, she finally gave in and spoke. She told him about Alicia's injury, about the boy named Ash who went alone into the Elven continent to find a cure, and about the mana contract Alice had formed with him. Hearing that, the old man was once again shocked. His eyes widened in disbelief before narrowing, now filled with fury and anger as he looked at all of them. His voice came out, calm but firm, filled with the weight of countless years and authority as he asked, "Where is the girl?" "In the infirmary," Nicole replied hurriedly. But seeing the old man's furious expression, he lowered his head in shame, not daring to meet his master's gaze. The old man didn't waste another second. He immediately turned and walked towards the room where Alicia was resting. The other 7 saints quietly followed behind him. Even though they wanted to speak, to explain the reasoning behind their actions, when they saw the silent rage in their master's eyes, they remained quiet, not daring to utter a word. As they reached her room and the door opened, the old man's eyes immediately fell on the silver-haired girl who was sleeping soundly on the bed. Her face looked calm, as if untouched by everything that had happened. But the old man's eyes flashed sharply the moment he saw her, and the wheel in his eyes began to spin rapidly. "This is it. She is the one." He focused, his eyes tracing the countless invisible threads of fate that wrapped around the girl's body. His expression grew serious. He could see the strange and complex connections tied to her. The moment he saw the strongest thread, the one that led to the anomaly, he understood everything. She was the person the anomaly cared about the most. If she died, he would lose all reason, and the destruction he would bring upon the universe would be so terrible and massive that even the gods and angels would tremble in fear. And the first to face his wrath will be this world. But if she survives, then maybe, just maybe, there might be a way to avoid everything that is coming. "Are you sure she cannot be healed?" the old man asked Myra in a calm but serious tone, his gaze still locked onto the sleeping girl. Myra stepped forward and replied softly, "As I told you earlier, only life magic has the ability to heal her. Nothing else will work." Hearing that, the old man went completely silent. His eyes began to glow even brighter as the wheel in them spun even faster than before. In his heart, a question began to form. "Who exactly are you?" The moment that thought passed through his mind, the truth began to reveal itself. Details about Alicia Moonglow appeared before him. Information from her past life, her memories, everything she had done after arriving in this world. Through her, he even saw Ash. He saw his truth as well, the impossible truth. Ash, a transmigrator. Seeing all this play out in front of him, the man who was known as the Whisperer, the one people called the Seer of Fate, took a step back in complete disbelief. How? Transmigration? Is something like that even possible? The weight of what he had just witnessed pressed down on him like the crushing gravity of a dead star.
No divine signature. No summon ritual.
No celestial records. Then how? Who pulled the strings behind this? Was it the gods? The abyss? Or someone else? The old man clenched his fists, his voice silent but burning inside his mind like wildfire. But that wasn't all. What came next shook him far more. And what is this? Why is she blessed with moon? His mind felt like it was being torn apart by the impossible truths he had just witnessed. Damn it, the moon and the star together in one timeline. This is not just dangerous. It is beyond catastrophic. Damn the universe and damn fate itself. He was not that shocked by the fact that both Ash and Alicia had transmigrated. What shook him to his very core was the fact that both the moon and the star now existed at the same time, in the same world. Contact the elves, he ordered in a loud voice, one that allowed no room for argument. Tell them if he comes there. They must inform us immediately. But master, he is already dead. The mana contract I formed with him has vanished. It became null. Alice tried to explain, but before she could finish, "Shut up, you foolish girl," he roared, his voice thunderous. "Do exactly as I say. Do not test my patience. Do you want me to punish you all for your stupidity? You sent a child to his death. Is this what I taught you? Answer me. If not for the current crisis, I would have personally stripped every single one of you of your positions, you absolute morons." He took a deep breath, trying to suppress the fury boiling in his chest. "Find the boy. He is still alive. And do not dare harm him. If you do..." He didn't need to finish that sentence. The weight in his voice said everything. The 7 saints bowed deeply and left without another word. The old man turned back to Alicia, his heart heavy. Damn it. On one side stands the star, the one I swore to protect. On the other side stands the moon. And if she dies, then blood will flood the cosmos until only silence remains. And if nothing is done, it will open the door to the abyss, present time. Congratulations, Challenger, for perfectly clearing Trial 2. For climbing all the stairs without dying, you will be rewarded with Reward 1, Prime Shard. Description: increases your stats by +4 points randomly. Reward 2, Unnamed Gloves. Description: a mysterious piece from Nameless Equipment Set. These gloves will only reveal their true power when all 6 matching pieces are worn together. Until then, they remain nothing more than ornamental gear with no special effect. Reward 3,